Okay, well, I want to welcome all of you here and really appreciate the fact that you've come out tonight and also the fact that you're here in order to give careful listening to all of our candidates and careful deliberation before you exercise the very important responsibility of voting. I'm Bill Carney. I'm the president of Sustainable San Rafael. I also want to thank our candidates, of course, and they'll be introduced in a few minutes. But again, you know, I appreciate the fact that they're here. I appreciate very much the fact that they care enough about our community and about really providing leadership on the very important issues that face Marin to step up to the plate and offer their services and their leadership. And I think we all very much appreciate that from all of them. Many of those issues, of course, are squarely sustainability issues. And we think of sustainability as being defined by 3 E's, environment being an initial one that is often associated with us. We've certainly that is something in the form of sea level rise and other manifestations of climate change and many other related issues that faces Marin. But we also have economic issues, the impact of traffic on productivity as well as on our quality of life and quality of air and lots of other impacts. And we have in addition, we have issues that touch very much on the 3rd E, which is social equity. And we see this particularly with growing income disparities in our county and a decreasing or diminishing supply of affordable housing. That's really squeezing out the diversity that gives strength to any community, whether it's a natural community or a human community. So we hope to learn tonight how each of these candidates approaches each of these issues. And as importantly, I think we'll begin to see how each of them begins to connect the dots among these very important issues, because they're really part of a single fabric of a sustainable future for Marin. And I'm hopeful also that in the format that we've set up here, there'll be some opportunity for witnessing how these folks might work together as colleagues, because at least three of the folks before you tonight are going to be working together for the next 4 years collegially on behalf of the entirety of Marin. So that'll be interesting to see in the course of the evening. So with that, I want to give a couple of minutes to my colleague from Sustainable Marin, Kiki Porta, who's been very instrumental in the sustainability movement in Marin.
As we always say at the beginning of our sustainable meetings, greetings, sustainables. So you're in the room, and that means that no matter how many of these candidate events you may have attended, you've thought enough of the idea of looking at the issues that we face through the lens of sustainability to come tonight. So that's really important, and that's something that I personally and all of us ought to be patting each other on the back about. Sustainability has in some ways become that buzzword, but as Bill described, we talk about environment, and we talk about economy, and we talk about social equity. I'd like to call your attention to your program. I want to welcome the San Rafael Chamber of Commerce to their sponsorship, co-sponsorship of this event, along with all the other sustainables at Marin, and also bringing to your attention that students from the Marin School of Environmental Leadership have helped us with this event, have supplied questions, and are working with us tonight. That is our future, and that is the future that all of our candidates tonight 3 of whom will be comprising a new Board of Supervisors in January, we'll need to be addressing. Connecting the dots is really understanding that there is no question that we can ask tonight that doesn't touch all the other questions. And my fervent hope is that everybody in this room, before you vote, analyze the candidates and their positions on issues that are important to you. We have preventing climate change. We have adapting to climate change. We have supporting each other in an equitable and fair community, or we have opportunities to continue to make it difficult for many people to live here or to stay here. We have traffic, we have issues of education and justice. And so all of those are considerations that I'm hoping will be in your minds as you vote. And the most important thing is vote. Don't do what it says on here. Don't vote. We want you to vote after you've made up your mind through these important lenses. If you don't have a program and you'd like one, please raise your hand and someone will come around and bring you one. And if you don't have a card to write questions, raise your hand and someone will bring you one. We're looking forward to a lively and interesting evening. Thank you so much for being here.
Just to underline the importance of the program, we actually are not providing an opportunity for the candidates to give their introduction. So what you hold in your hand really is the bio introduction for each candidate. So it's a very, very important document to take away with you. There's one other huge thanks that I want to, person that I want to thank, and that is Lisa Max, who is on the board of Sustainable San Rafael and really has pulled this event together. So I want to thank Lisa and also the other volunteers that have helped in making the evening happen. I also want to mention a couple of the other partner organizations that are on your program. One is the Marin Environmental Housing Collaborative, and they're going to help in sorting out questions tonight as well. And Marin Link and the League of Women Voters of Marin County, who really hold that overall fabric of our community very much at the core of their mission. So, to guide us through this, we're really pleased tonight to have a real pro to moderate the discussion. We have an actual radio talk show host, Peter B. Kallins. Peter co-hosts the show Marin Voices and Views on Marin TV. And so you can find him online. Actually, right now you can find him online interviewing all of these people. So there's an ample opportunity there for additional information if you're still seeking that after this evening is over. I should say also that the League of Women Voters likewise has an online series of interviews. And this evening's proceedings are being videotaped and will be posted to all of the partners' sites as well. So lots of opportunity to get educated and stay educated on the various views you're going to hear. Also wanted to mention that Peter's background goes through I hesitate to say, alphabet a spectrum or universe of alphabet radio stations, which you'll probably recognize over the decades: KOME, KGO, KNBR, KSFO, and those are just a few. So really brings a lot of experience to the role of moderating tonight. Also, very importantly to me, great qualification, he is from originally Cincinnati, which also, having been resident there for several years, I can vouch, gives you a unique ability to listen carefully to those that you may not agree with. So that's a great job, qualification for his role tonight. It also, oddly enough, is sort of good preparation for California because Cincinnati considers itself, and was in fact the gateway city to the American West, fashions itself the Queen City for that reason. And that lasted for 2 or 3 years, I think, before moving on to St. Louis and points west. But nonetheless, it is a very important American community. And from a climate change standpoint, I will say it has a subliminal consciousness of sea level rise, because everywhere you look, all the building stone has seashells in it, because it once was a coastal city. In fact, it was underwater for several geologic epochs. So he brings that background, I'm sure, with him, and lots of other arcane things as well as very germane things. So, Peter, I'll turn it over to you for the rest of the evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. I'm pleased to be here tonight. I did escape from Cincinnati, a Republican machine town with high humidity. And I was just recalling, while we're warming up here, that the last time I was in this room, Joe Nation was flacking for PG&E and trying to sell out Marin Clean Energy, and it didn't work. A couple of quick items. Bill, thank you for mentioning. I have participated in interviewing all of the candidates here this evening on the Marin Voices and View TV show. All those shows are at our website, named after the show, Marin Voices and Views. And I welcome you to check them out. Larry Strick is my co-host on that program, and we got to meet all the candidates that way. Now, one advantage I have, ladies and gentlemen, I've heard your answers. I want different answers tonight, and I'll press you a little bit in the follow-ups for that. Also, I want to mention that on election night, because there are so many important and exciting races here in Marin County, I will be co-anchoring coverage on Marin TV on cable channel 26. Unfortunately, not available in Novato, and I can't do anything about that. And Greg Brockbank is going to join me and Larry Strick for that important coverage. So I hope you'll make a note of that, and we will try to get as many of you candidates on the show that night as possible. So look for an email from our production team in the near future, and we will try to set that up. And finally, just a personal plug, I host a Screamin' podcast about national and international affairs, and you can find that at the website they named after me, peterbkallins.com. That's my payment for being here this evening. So first, I want to introduce the candidates and thank you, each of you, for standing for elective office. It requires a lot of work, a lot of tenacity, the unfortunate requirement to ask people for money that most of us really hate, and it takes a lot out of you. So I really applaud each of you for taking on this challenge and offering your services to the citizens of Marin. As was mentioned, the biographies are in your scorecard tonight, so we're going to move the program along with just a brief introduction. In District 2, Katie Rice, Frank Egger, Kevin Haroff, and in District 4, Alex Easton-Brown, Dominic Grossi, Wendi Kallins, Tomas Kaselionis, Dennis Rodoni, and Brian Staley. Candidates Al Dugan and Mary Tamburo could not be with us this evening. And in Southern Marin, District 3, get the number wrong, we want to welcome Kate Sears and Susan Kirsch. So the format here is going to be each candidate will get a minute to answer the question. They know the first 4 questions. The 5th is a bonus question that I'll be asking. At the end of each round, after each question has been answered by all the candidates. We're going to try to mix it up a little bit in some controlled chaos. I ask the candidates who have a follow-up comment to raise your hands during the follow-up period, and I also will be following up in certain cases. So, I want to begin with question 1 about traffic. This has been identified as a prime issue in all districts in this campaign. It's an economic issue because it affects whether people can get to jobs and services. It's an environmental issue because emissions are the #1 producer of greenhouse gases in Marin. Starting with Katie Rice, what would you do to alleviate the traffic issue in Marin? Be specific, and please prioritize the steps you propose. And I'll bring the microphone.
Should I stand up or sit down? Okay. Well, it's hard. It was more towards the people in the back of the room, but that's okay. All right. Okay. Well, so good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to be here this evening. So I've got just a minute and a half or a minute, whatever it is. So congestion, traffic congestion, many causes. Most of them related to us, either because it's us driving around a whole bunch, or it's the fact that we put in land use and policy years ago that limited the amount of roadway we have, and also the fact that we're importing tens of thousands of jobs every day into Marin County. It does need to be addressed, and there's 3 ways that I think it need to be addressed, and they are all equally important. 1, we do need to work with the infrastructure we have to make it work more efficiently and effectively for both auto and public transit. We also need to attack school-related transit. That is a cohort that we can reduce with school programs, with busing, et cetera. And thirdly, we need to continue to encourage folks to get out of their cars into public transit, biking, walking, et cetera. My time's up. Thanks for being here this evening.
Frank Egger is next.
Traffic, that's a real challenge here in Marin, let me tell you. I'd like to see Marin Transit get into the 21st century with an on-demand, app-driven system that can get small vans into their neighborhoods, back into Canyons, pick folks up, get them out here to doctor's appointments, to shopping locations, to bus ferry and train terminals. We have to mobilize, and we have to think smart. As far as what's going on in Marin, you know, we're being inundated by traffic coming out of San Francisco across the Golden Gate to Richmond Santa Fe onto I-80. We need to get that traffic back on the Bay Bridge where it belongs and get it out of Marin County. We're going to do that by collecting tolls in both directions on the Golden Gate and the Richmond Santa Fe Bridge. That's going to move that traffic back to the East Bay. If they have to pay, you know, twice to come this way to get over to I-80, it'll stop that cut through, that shortcut. But you know, Marin it does a great job, and we're going to come up with solutions.
Next, Kevin.
Okay, should I stand or should I sit?
It's up to you, but please do use the microphone because it helps the video.
I will use the
pick up your
microphone.
voice.
First of all, darn it. I want to thank the sponsors of Sustainability Counts Forum for holding this event tonight. It's a real pleasure to be here. Environmental sustainability is a key part of my campaign for Supervisor in District 2, whether it is climate change, sea level rise, preserving our local water resources, or protecting our open spaces from degradation through overuse. Managing traffic is a key to achieving environmental sustainability in our community. My focus is primarily on the traffic congestion problems we have along the Sir Francis Drake corridor, leading up to the Greenbrae interchange with Highway 101. I have supported adoption of some elements of the county's current proposals to deal with that issue, in particular the reconfiguration of vehicle lanes to increase roadway capacity. But I'm also a strong advocate of advanced signal control technology, which applies computerized real-time traffic signaling to move vehicles through the corridor, reducing idling time for cars and trucks, and making a real difference for greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you.
Next is Alex Easton-Brown.
Yeah. We should stop spending money to attract tourists to Marin. They only benefit a few businesses, and we are left with their pollution and their traffic and their trash. We should limit the number of tour buses to Muir Woods and shut down Vista Point on the bridge to all but pedestrians and bicyclists. We should charge commuters $5 during peak commute for using Marin as a shortcut between the city and East Bay. We can use a fast-track reader at Drake and Anderson and another at Bellum. And we must cone open the third lane on the Richmond Bridge, a la Governor Christie.
Thank you.
Dominic Grossi.
Well, there are many things we need to do. Traffic has become a horrible issue for the past 40 years here in Marin. And I think with 20% of our traffic coming from parents taking kids to school to get them there safely, there's a couple things to do. I think we need to expand upon the yellow school bus program they have going on in Mill Valley, especially up in areas like Corte Madera. We need to make sure that we have safe bike paths for kids to get to school, for the kids that want to ride their bikes to school to step in the right direction. That'll alleviate a little bit of traffic as well. I also think we need to work closely with the city of San Rafael to work on a direct connection to try to get from 101 over to 580. I think that will move things much quicker, but it's going to take a lot of work working with Caltrans as well. But that's something that's very important. And lastly, I would say we really need to work very closely with Sonoma County and try to find out where we can work on parking lots so that we can start incentivizing people to either be on public transit or to carpool so we have fewer people on the road and fewer emissions. Thank you.
Next, Wendi Kallins.
Well, thank you, Dominic, for promoting my program. I'm really the only person up here from running in my district who actually has reduced traffic. I run the Safe Routes to Schools program, and I served on the committee that is studying bringing back the yellow school buses. And I do think that that is one of the first steps that we can take to reduce traffic congestion. We need to take a step back and really evaluate where is traffic coming from, what is causing it, because knee-jerk reactions don't always solve the problem. If you expand lanes and allow room for more cars, you will get more cars. If you expand transit, you will get less cars. So if we're looking to get cars off the road, we need to focus on expanding our transit system. As Dominic said, expanding our bike and pedestrian ways. And really, it's not enough to provide the hardware. We actually have to work with people, as we did with Safe Routes to Schools, to get people to actually want to ride the transit. Thank you.
Tomas Kaselionis.
All right, it's on. Good. So I just recently swam pretty much the distance from San Francisco to Central Santa Fe, and I would not recommend that. It's pretty long. But I am the only commuter right now that's standing up here, and I've commuted for the last 13 years, 8 of those over to the East Bay and Oakland. And there currently is no real public transit for me to take, so I take a van pool. But now it's unsafe for me to even take my van pool. My parking site hasn't been this sparse since I've started. Because there was a recent spree. Both my truck and a vehicle were stolen just last week. And we have to make it safe for commuters to be able to use these programs. We need to hold accountable the public agencies. The police department still hasn't called me back from my claim that I filed. So neither the sheriff, the CHP, or the police department care. I contacted Central Marin. They didn't do anything either. We also have to work with organizations. There's a great new app specifically for school students, for parents to be able to bring together carpooling so parents can, hey, I'm going to go to the same ball game, boom, and they make themselves available. So I'd like to foster those businesses in Marin.
Next is Dennis Rodoni.
I'll try this sitting down. You're asking for priorities regarding transportation, and my first priority would be not to make it worse. My second priority would be to be aware of unintended consequences when we think we have a solution, because that turns out not to always be the best solution. But mostly, we should look at not having any development that would add additional traffic to Marin until we figure out the transportation system here. We need to work on improving the public transportation that we have. We need to better fund it. We also need to figure out a way to connect to our beautiful smart train that's going to be running down the tracks, but we have no interconnection to connect people to get on the smart train. And that's a big part of the puzzle that we need to work on right away and fund the type of public transportation that will connect up with smart so people can go up and down the 101 corridor. Certainly school bus coming back, school buses coming back. It's a wonderful idea, a wonderful program. Promoting bicycles is great. Thank you.
Next, Brian Staley.
It's important that we put this information or the subject into context. Over 65,000 people are on our freeways every single day. The majority of those individuals that are on the freeway are actually service sector employees, and this has everything to do with what many consider our unsustainable style of life. We require an enormous amount of support. We have people taking care of our children, we have people taking care of our properties, we have people taking care of our homes. In the 30s, we actually had an absolutely fantastic electric trolley system that easily could have taken care of a tremendous amount of the traffic that we have today. But we chose cars instead. We ripped it out and we chose cars. We are addicted to the automobile. So we have two options. We either can get rid of our automobiles or we can change our style of life. And I really don't see either of those options being viable.
Kate Sears.
So I think the affordability crisis that we have in San Francisco and Marin County creates a significant impediment to our really ultimately being able to make significant progress on solving our traffic problem. But we really need to get serious about reducing our number of car trips. And so I think the yellow school bus program in Tiburon, it's reduced traffic by 35%. I'm very excited about the program that was going to be launched in Mill Valley. As a board member in Marin Transit, I've worked to increase our public transit bus service by 19% this spring. As a Golden Gate Bridge District member, I worked to make sure that we took over the commute ferry run to Tiburon. And as a SMART board member, I'm very excited about our starting train service between Sonoma and Marin. I think that's going to have a significant impact on reducing our commute between our two counties. And we are working on the connections and the last mile connections to get people from their homes to the SMART train. I also want to work on expanding our park and ride opportunities in Southern Marin. There's a beautiful location right at the East Blythedale 101 overpass that would make a great park and ride.
Susan Kirsch.
So I'd like to bring forward the idea of the Hippocratic Oath, which is to do no harm, and to say the version of that for traffic, I think, is not make matters worse. In the 3rd District, we've just had a decision this month that will add 600 car trips a day to the Redwood Highway feeding onto 101. That was thanks to our current Board of Supervisors passing that, which will make matters worse. And it's true, the yellow school bus program, who cares really what color it is, but the school bus program in Mill Valley will reduce maybe 250 trips for that many children being able to be eligible for the bus program. And we still have a net loss because of a decision which is to add 600 car trips a day. That's an unsustainable kind of way to look at how we're going to ever have a resolution to traffic. In addition to that, we should be looking at synchronizing lights, improving frequency and connecting spots for public transportation and other issues like that.
Okay, now we're into the follow-up period. Would any of the candidates like to offer a follow-up? Raise your hand, please.
Peter, just one second. If anyone has any questions, there are students here who have cards and pens. And please pass them in and we'll collect them and have them asked later.
Great. Yes, we'll be doing questions from the audience a little bit later. So we have two, one on each side. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So on this side, Kate Sears, would you like to respond particularly on the issue of the strawberry?
Yes, I would. I'm always glad when my opponent brings up the additional 600 car trips. And this came out of a decision regarding the medical office buildings at Belvedere Place in Strawberry. And if I had not done what I did, we would have had 4 times the number of car trips that we will have with that particular project. Keep in mind, the school bus service is really important because those are cars that are all taking their kids to school at the same time. So that's an intensified impact. When you have medical office buildings or other kinds of office buildings, you have people going to and fro at all times during the day. So these are really apples and oranges. But I also think it's important to focus on what the reality is. We need to make sure that any land use decision that we're looking at minimizes the traffic impact, and that was exactly what was done with the decision that our board made at Bentley Place and the medical office building.
All right, Susan, I see your hand raised, and we'll allow one comment, but we're not
Okay.
going to ping pong back.
So I just want to say that this office building was deed restricted. And we'll probably hear later tonight the importance of maintaining affordable housing by having deed restricted housing. But this decision to add 600 cars a day should have never happened because of this building being deed restricted based on the wishes of the community and the constituency who had only approved that building going up in the first place where there would not be medical office use allowed. The community in Southern Marin has always been prioritizing traffic as its primary issue to be solved. They have never prioritized needing medical office space in the community. So again, you know, there could have been no additional car trips a day.
All right, next, Kevin Haroff. Yes.
I won't take that long. That's okay. I just want to comment. Tom said he was the only commuter in the room here. He's not the only commuter in the room. I commute every day, going down Sir Francis Drake, taking my daughter to school at Kent Middle School, and driving into San Francisco every day. Traffic in this community is abysmal. It needs to be fixed. The county has proposed a variety of different strategies that will not address traffic congestion in this community. I have endorsed proposals, which I articulated a few minutes ago, that will in fact do that. And I really encourage folks to take those proposals seriously. Thank you.
We accept your commuter status, but have you ever really swum across the
I've tried. It doesn't work very well.
Next, I have a follow-up for Frank Egger. Frank, I think your app idea is interesting and very apropos, if you can handle that. But your idea to charge tolls in both directions on both bridges requires buy-in from state agencies and the independent Golden Gate Bridge District. That's not easy to achieve.
Well, you know, we need to know how many folks are going southbound in the morning and how many folks are coming northbound at night. We're collecting a toll southbound in the morning. They have no idea what they're losing with the northbound tolls that should be on I-80. I mean, if we can show them that they're going to raise some revenue, they may well go for it.
Okay. And Alex Easton-Brown, you seem to be wanting to ban tourists from Marin County. And there's a study that just came out that shows a huge economic benefit from tourism in the county. You want to pass that up?
Yeah, that was aligned with statistics, which can be done quite easily. They used broad federal data to extrapolate a false outcome. Most people that come here are day trippers.
Can you back that up?
Well, yeah.
All right.
Well, I don't have my thing with me. But
Okay.
Okay. Hey, look, most of these people that come here are day trippers. A lot of these people get on a bus in San Francisco because the bus companies advertise a bucket list of places they'll take them during the day. Lombard Street, here, you know. So anyway, they get on a bus. They come over, maybe they spend some money at a deli. Then they go back home. And then the people in the deli that supposedly make money off this, there's the owners, obviously pocket. And then the workers, they go back to East Bay where they came from and spend the money over there. The money does not come to Marin's coffers.
Okay, I take your point. And next, I have a follow-up for Kate Sears. As a board member at the Golden Gate Bridge District, Alex Easton-Brown has made a very good point about the Vista Point that backs up traffic, particularly on the weekends. And I'm really aggrieved. I have lost hours of time backed up on the approach to the Golden Gate Bridge, only to discover that it's people lined up for the Vista Point. And why is it that they could close that during, what was the big event recently? The Super Bowl. Yeah, for the Super Bowl, they were able to close the Vista Point, But when I want to cross the bridge, I got to wait for all those touristas.
Right. So it always used to be that the Golden Gate Bridge staff would go out and put up those orange cones whenever there were too many cars going to Vista Point so we could stop Vista Point, the cars from going in. The Highway Patrol finally said, no, you don't get to do that because that's the Highway Patrol's job and not the Golden Gate Bridge District's job. We very much want on the Golden Gate Bridge District to have Vista Point accessible only for buses and not for cars. I thought that the Super Bowl opportunity to close Vista Point was a wonderful foot in the door for setting that precedent and really showing people how well that worked. And that's something that we are working on at the Bridge District to make that happen permanently.
Okay. I thought Katie Rice had a follow-up. Please pass the mic.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. We really can make an enormous difference addressing school-related traffic, and we all know that because we experience it over the Easter break and the spring breaks. You don't have to have all the school districts closed. You can have one school district closed. You trim down the traffic by 1 or 2%, and it makes an enormous difference. The yellow school bus program costs money for the families that are participating in and the school district and towns, but it is really making a difference on Sir Francis Drake in the Upper Valley as well as down in southern Marin, and we need to look to the communities to supporting that kind of program towards really making a difference in traffic.
Thank you. And Wendi Kallins, final follow-up on this round. Well, I see Frank has raised his hand. As long as you're there, let's. Okay. I'm not.
Okay, thank you.
That's not fair.
Hopefully, SMART is going to be really successful. And when SMART is successful, it's going to take that cut-through bypass traffic that comes out of Petaluma over through Nicasio and down Sir Francis Drake Boulevard and just backs up the Ross Valley, something fierce every morning. So let's make SMART successful, and let's get the Petaluma traffic back onto 101 or SMART.
Okay, and Wendi Kallins, finally.
Yeah, I just wanted to add what I started to say at the end of my comments, that, you know, we talk about a lot of good ideas, getting people to use the train, getting people on transit, wonderful apps. I know from real world experience that you can build it and that doesn't mean that they will come. It takes really good marketing, good promotion, and incentives to really encourage people to change behavior. And that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about a change of lifestyle. That's the experience that I bring from 16 years of changing the lifestyle in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendi. And I'd like to recognize that Mary Tamburo has arrived. Please come forward and take your seat. I don't want to keep going because I want to move on to the next topic. So allow me to be arbitrary, okay? I'm just taking it back from you to stop other people.
I'll hold on to it.
So our next topic is about affordable housing. It is a central social equity challenge facing Marin. Our communities become less diverse as young families, seniors, and others with limited incomes are priced out. These are our children and parents. Our economy and environment are also affected as workers who can't afford to live here must commute long distances in carbon-spewing cars. Growing numbers of homeless are another result. So the question is, how would you provide and preserve affordable housing in Marin while maintaining the character of our towns and cities? And an additional point, would you regulate rentals, including Airbnb, in order to protect renters? And this time I'm going to start on this side with Susan Kirsch, and we'll come around this way. Can you pass the mic over, please?
Well, this is great. I love where asking the question is as long as giving an answer to it with all the complexity of it. But regarding affordable housing, I think with affordable housing, the most important thing that we can do is to preserve what we have. And again, the 3rd District, Southern District, is such a great example of that because we have one of the largest components of affordable housing in Marin City, where there's Golden Gate Village that has 300 units providing housing for about 700 low-income people. Yet the current Board of Supervisors have been acting like we can imagine some of the worst absentee landlords, allowing that facility to acquire $16 million of deferred maintenance. So many of the people who live there are worried that they're going to eventually, the board or the housing authority will throw up their arms and say that this should be torn down and they will have to be temporarily housed, which the results in other positions like that is that people can't come back. So we need to be able to preserve the affordable housing that we have as the primary thing.
And would you regulate rentals?
In Mill Valley, we already have regulations around Airbnb, for example. There are registration requirements. There is taxation, the transit-orient tax that people have to pay. And they've made a great distinction between owner-occupied rental, those kinds of temporary rentals, and people who are buying or have houses that are totally dedicated to rentals. So I think having whole houses go up to be used for rentals that has to be looked at closely. I think individuals using their own property, owner occupied, that should be in a separate category.
All right. Kate Sears, please.
Yes, thank you. So coming out of the 4 workshops that our Board of Supervisors held on affordable housing really put a face, I think, on the affordability crisis in Marin County and especially in West Marin as well as in our communities along the 101 corridor. And coming out of that, our board really agreed to focus on acquisition and preservation of the affordable housing that we have, but also to then look for opportunities for conversion, acquisition and conversion of properties to affordable. I think this is extraordinarily important to expand the amount of workforce housing that we have for all of us as employers. We're also looking at expanding the number of junior second units to address some of the house-rich, cash-poor, and isolation issues of people in our community. We're looking at creating landlord incentive programs and also voluntary rent guidelines. So we're trying to really address this issue in a variety of ways. Coming out of those workshops, I think all of us were really struck by the crisis in West Marin and so many of the houses that are turned into vacation rentals. And so I think we need to look very carefully at Airbnb issues and how to deal with the vacation rental problem. And I'll comment more on that later.
Thank you. And I want to welcome Mary Tamburo. You missed the section on traffic, and we'll just assume you were stuck in traffic.
Well, thanks. That's only part of the story. I was canvassing for Bernie, and so I I spent a little too much time doing that, but that tends to be how I am. So.
All right, talk to us about housing.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. As I was canvassing for Bernie, I was canvassing with a teacher, so I decided to pick his brain a little bit about what his thoughts were about workforce housing, and so we were talking about tiered taxation for properties that are not primary residences, which sounds like an interesting idea I'd like to look into. I would also like to see conversion of commercial properties that are located near transit rather than build more. You know, I know there's this big push for high-density housing, transit-oriented development that comes with it's got that dangling carrot of transportation dollars, which I have some issues about based on my experience with the Safe Routes to Schools controversy in my own neighborhood. So that's it for now.
Okay.
Here you go, Brian.
Thank you. Brian Staley.
I wanted to continue basically what Supervisor Sears was referring to, which is the series of hearings that were held at the county. Essentially, one of my primary concerns is that the supervisors decided that there would be no rent control, which is a very often used tool throughout the Bay Area, but for some reason, supervisors decided that would not be a viable option in Marin. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I feel that the transient occupancy tax is unusually low. It's right now only 10%, and I feel if that were raised, it would create a fund with which the county could continue its existing project of acquiring, as Supervisor Sears had mentioned, existing housing stock and be able to expand and offer an extension of that program and be somewhat more aggressive in it. I think that's really the true answer, along with junior second units and the construction of second units in infill.
And can you clarify, are you explicitly in favor of some form of rent control?
Well, I believe it's one of many tools that is a very commonly used tool in the Bay Area, and I'm surprised that it is not being considered.
Okay. Dennis Rodoni.
Thank you. The county's new affordable housing plan is a good plan. Buying existing houses and keeping them affordable in our communities makes sense. Doing infill development makes sense. But we really have to make second units and junior accessory units much more affordable to build and to have so that people can afford to do it and use them as affordable rentals. The problem that we have with the second units has always been it's too costly through the permit process, it's too costly to build them, so how could you possibly rent them for less? My proposal on those is to revise the whole second unit ordinance and incentivize the fact that people will rent them for affordable. And you do that by making fees go away and perhaps having reduction in property taxes, because essentially they're worth less in the market, so they should pay less property taxes as long as they're in the affordable housing sector. The new developments are, I'll stop.
All right, so there's no way I'm going to be able to do this answer justice. So I've written an article, it's called Housing Octopus, the Many Tentacles of Housing in Marin, and you can go to tomasformarin.com. And I give 6 very specific recommendations, both regulating how you do short-term and long-term rentals and some other ordinances. So I'd ask you to go and read that. But I'd like to touch on one point. One thing I'd like to say to the existing supervisors is I think you need to go back to the housing element and make it more clear and put some definable dates to it. I question that there is a lack of clarity and that many of the goals are missorted, so you don't know when you're getting to an achieved goal. So I would do that first. Second, we have an investment pool, and you have a $140 million reserve, and I'd like to see that invested because I posted an article just a few days ago talking about green investment, and I question whether or not green investment by government is actually a wise choice, and I do believe it is, because there's a return on that investment, both a social return as well as an equitable return, and I think we need to explore those.
Thank you, Thomas. Next, Wendi Kallins.
So there's a lot of good ideas running around up here talking about creative reuse of our existing housing stock. We actually have the dubious honor of being the most overhoused community in California, meaning we have more bedrooms than we have people who are living here. So creative reuse is very important. But we also need to look at new housing. With 68,000 people commuting in here for jobs every day, we need to look at how we can bring at least some of them, we're never going to get all of them, into some kind of housing. And obviously, the processes we've been using thus far have only turned people off to housing. So we need to restart the conversation and really get people engaged and involved from the very beginning so that people are on the same page as to the need for housing, why there's a need for housing, and what the actual repercussions of providing more housing and not providing more housing are for us, because we have learned that not providing housing has actually increased our traffic congestion. It's an interesting paradox, but that's part of looking at things systemically.
Dominic, Grossi.
I think we need to start by taking care of the housing that we have, and we also need to be looking for areas where the county can step in and purchase housing to help out and then turn it over to organizations like CLAM to manage it and make sure that it is used for affordable housing. I think that we should stay away from building massive units. We need to stick with something that fits into the character of Marin. If we're in that 36 to 48 units of nicer housing that we could look at as affordable housing, I think would be important, and it would fit here better. The other thing is the junior second units. You've heard it mentioned. I'm a big proponent of that as well. It's a chance to bring people into your homes, give them a place to live, which would be affordable possibly, but also for our seniors, for healthcare reasons. To have caretakers be able to live in someone's home close by, I think, is very important for the elderly and also, for the people that are looking for those jobs. And the third thing I would do is go back and look at the housing that the county does obtain. And we have to be very careful and put restrictions, I think, on making sure that that housing is for people that live and work or that are going to be working close by to that housing.
Thank you. Alex Easton-Brown.
Rent control and restrictions on vacation rentals are okay with me. Except for second units, junior units, Marin is really built out. If you haven't noticed, Marin is already overcrowded. The market controls who lives here. Prices are high because rich people can afford to live here. It's our capitalist system, and there's not a lot we can do about that.
Kevin Haroff.
Well, thanks. As many of you know, I've been a member of the Larkspur City Council for the last 2.5 years, and we've gone through a lengthy process to try to figure out ways in which we can encourage the development and promotion of affordable housing within our community. There are reasonable and realistic strategies to do that without changing the environmental character of this community through infill development opportunities and through the promotion of junior second units. Everyone on this panel promotes all of those things. I certainly do as well. But what I don't approve of is the way in which the County of Marin has promoted greenfield development along the Highway 101 corridor through 2 or 3 iterations of their housing element. That is not sustainable development. That is inappropriate development. We do not need high-density, transit-oriented development in Marin County. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't accommodate the needs to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and I think it's frankly a travesty that the county continues to promote those kinds of high-density development strategies in Marin County. Thank you.
Frank Egger.
The answer is be like Fairfax, the most affordable town in Marin County, and it really is. Okay. We protect all of our rental housing stock, the apartments. Never has an apartment building or unit in Fairfax been converted to a condominium for sale on the market. We have all our rental stock it's there. You know, there's thousands of second units all over the county. We've got to bring them out of the shadows. We've got to get them up to health and safety codes, and we've got to get them legalized. But all this talk about affordable housing doesn't mean a lot if you don't talk about living wages. As the mayor of Fairfax, I authored Fairfax's living wage law. Today it's $20.11. I've long supported a $15 an hour minimum wage throughout Marin County, in fact, throughout the North Bay. If we can't pay $15 an hour to our workforce right now, what the heck? How can we expect them to afford to live here? We need $15 an hour living wage now, not 6 years from now. Thank you.
Katie Rice.
So all the strategies around trying to address this housing issue, I think, have been brought up by the fellow panelists, and I want to say 2 things. Last year, actually going back a couple years, we had the Wind Cup emerge next to the freeway. Between Wind Cup, which is pretty much a disaster in my mind and a poor model of the kind of housing we want to build, and then Plan Bay Area, everyone got all hysterical around housing and housing development. Last year, as president of the board, I thought it was really important that we turn the conversation. Marin County is pretty much built out. We need to be looking at solutions that don't add more housing in ways that aren't consistent with community character. And that's how the conversation shifted to utilizing the existing built environment through acquisition, preservation, conversion, second units, what have you. But the most important thing that happened is that communities, individuals within communities throughout the county started to recognize that we have an affordable housing problem. We have a housing problem here, and we need to address it as a community.
Thank you. All right, who would like a follow-up opportunity? I see Kevin, Dennis. Let's start with Kate Sears.
So, you know, we really need affordable housing in all the areas of our county and not just in Marin City. And we also, I think, all need to remember that affordable housing is not the same as public housing. We have all different layers of affordability and need at all different layers of affordability. We need affordable housing for families, but I think we also need smaller scale, small size affordable housing. One of the examples that I always brought up when we were talking about what does infill development really mean, I always looked at the example of the senior rotary housing in Sausalito, which is a fantastic development that fits right into the neighborhood. It's small scale units. It doesn't have to be seniors. There are plenty of young people who want to work here, who do work here, who would be happy in smaller units. I think we have many opportunities that we can take advantage of.
Dennis, Mary raised her hand, so we'll go to her next.
I was late to raise my hand. I guess I'm consistent. I would like to take a look at the Artworks model. I bring this up a lot because I'm a big fan of community housing trusts, where the nonprofit organization purchases a property and then rents it out as affordable housing. So if you don't know about it, please take a look. Artworks downtown, 4th Street in San Rafael, and let's just replicate that because it's really a great
project.
Okay, Dennis Rodoni.
Part of the affordable housing challenge is workforce housing. And we need to work on that in the county, bring our public employees back here, our teachers and firemen to live here. One of the ways to do that is like Napa County and 15 other municipalities in California do, is provide a silent second investment in our employees and in their homes so they can afford to move back and live in Marin. We do that at North Marin Water District. We've been doing it for 10 years. We moved 10 employees, one a year, back into the district who would no longer live here and be here for an emergency hadn't we done the program. The county needs to take some of its mass investment and invest in its employees and the people. Thank you.
Kevin? You've got it.
Two things real quick. I just have to go back to a comment that Mr. Egger made about SMART being the solution to our traffic problems in District 2. SMART will not help any of our traffic problems in District 2. It'll only exacerbate them. In terms of Supervisor Rice's comments about Plan Bay Area, Supervisor Rice was one of the biggest proponents of Plan Bay Area, which has resulted in the kinds of development like we have seen at WinCup. Supervisor Rice was in absentia when we had the process we went through with the Smart Station Area Plan 2 years ago, year and a half ago. I oppose that kind of development. I will continue to oppose that kind of development. We need a supervisor in Marin County for District 2 that will continue to stand up for the people who live in this community and not support regional interest to promote development. Thank you.
Let's give Supervisor Rice an opportunity to respond.
You bet.
Not sure where the biggest proponent of Bay Area label got put on, Plan Bay Area got put on me. But just one thing about Plan Bay Area, which is really important, and I did vote for its approval along with everyone else, I think, except for one, on the ABAG board. If you look at our original countywide plan, it put into 3 corridors of land use: the city-centered corridor, inland rural, and our agricultural lands. The idea was to develop housing and commercial in the areas near the transit corridor, which is the 101 corridor. Plan Bay Area, one of its most primary tenets is to prevent sprawl, and that is certainly a tenet that is aligned with Marin County values and was a strong tenet of Plan Bay Area.
Okay, Frank, I'll come to you in a minute. Tomas?
So one thing I'd like to really try to nurture in Marin County when I travel the country trying to help people rebuild their homes and using the term manufactured home doesn't work, but if you look at the Blue Homes model, they have so little waste that we have to get rid of brick and mortar building. And I would love to see examples of where we're going to build communities that are not only environmentally sustainable like Blue Homes, but also environmentally sustainable. They're collecting their rainwater. There's thermal energy involved. Where are those homes in Marin? And I'd love to be able to create the foundation for grants and other things to promote those.
All right. Thank you. Frank?
So years ago, Fairfax had its police department do license plate checks on the vehicles coming in from San Jeronimo Valley on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. And it turns out that a high percentage of those vehicles were registered in Petaluma and in Roner Park. So in fact, if SMART works, if we reduce some traffic on 101, those cars will be back on 101 and not coming through the Ross Valley.
Dominic, Grossi?
Just briefly, it was mentioned the second units, and I think they're an extremely important part of what we could do when it comes to affordability. So we could deed those units as affordable for people that want to make them legal. And that's a big thing, because right now so many of them are illegal throughout all of Marin County. But you have to incentivize the idea to legalize them. You have to give tax incentives, back off on the tax, on your property taxes a little bit, so that people will bring them up to code and then deed them for affordable.
Wendi, Kallins?
Yeah, I just have to make a comment on transit-oriented development, a term that has been greatly distorted, as though the WinCup development is transit-oriented development. It is no such thing. It is a very traditional apartment building that is very automobile-oriented. If we do not have a lot of room for any new development, and we certainly don't want to build into our open spaces or the far reaches of our county. And so the most important thing is to, if we're going to be creating new housing, is to make it accessible to transit to shops and services so people will use the transit and walk or bike to those shops and services. If we want to reduce traffic, we need to put housing in the location where it's going to reduce the amount of traffic. Thank you.
We'll go to Susan and then Alex for a wrap-up on this topic.
So one of the things about Plan Bay Area that this panel is showing is that we really don't need to rely on regional planners to tell us what we need to do in our communities, that we've had so many good ideas that have come out of just what you've heard here. I would add just a couple of more things, that we also have the model of Habitat for Humanity, who does great building projects for ownership for communities. We also have the idea of pooled resources that people can come together to be able to build. You know, the idea of the deed restriction, if the county does acquire and has deed restrictions, we need to go back to understand, are those really protected deed restrictions? Because in an office building, that deed was violated. So we need to look at where's the teeth and where's going to be the commitment that deeds really mean something.
Thank you. Alex Easton-Brown.
Yeah, on the back road of Petaluma. A lot of those guys are contractors, and you're not going to get Joe Contractor on Smart with his table saw. It's not going to happen. So I think Smart is not going to make a bit of difference, and I'm willing to bet money to that effect.
We're not accepting any wagers here this evening, but I can recommend a casino across the bridge if that's what you need.
You can try.
Our next question is about climate change, which has been identified as the overriding environmental challenge of our era. It'll bring severe economic and equity impacts in Marin. These include increasing wildfires, rising sea levels, and flooding, and these affect every district. So starting with Katie Rice, as a supervisor, what specific actions do you propose to meet the threat of sea level rise in Marin? And do you support Measure AA to help deal with this threat? And why or why not on Measure AA?
Well, so towards meeting the threat of sea level rise, we are, and we've started, and we need to continue to work together across jurisdictions. That's the cities and towns and the county of Marin, as well as other public agencies, to identify where we are at risk, public property, public infrastructure, private property, and to figure out what our options are for dealing with that risk around sea level rise. Both in the short term and in the long term, and we're going to need to prioritize. It's going to be quite a challenge, this collaboration and this coalition that deals with sea level rise. 30 seconds, let's see. So at the county level, we started with Sea Smart out on the coast, looking at our coastal areas, and then more recently ELAN with the Bay Wave project. And that is all about identifying risk and figuring out what our options are. At the same time as we're working on these issues as local agencies and public agencies, we also need to be, as individuals and as communities, figuring out what we can do to reduce our own greenhouse gas emissions. And on Measure AA, yes, I'm a big supporter. I can't think of anything better than marshland restoration, than what we can do with regards to water quality, what we can do as we're looking at our shoreline with regards to if sea level rise can be mitigated with projects that will be funded through Measure AA. So I am a big supporter.
Thank you. Frank Egger is next.
As a member of the Ross Valley Sanitary District Board, we're dealing with sea level rise right now. When we're replacing sewer pipes in Larkspur and low-lying areas of Greenbrae, we're running into the seawater right in our trenches. The only way we're going to be able to deal with that is through the passage of AA. That's going to allow us some funds to be able to not only increase our wetlands around the Bay Area, but also to purchase some of these properties that are in tidal areas and take them off the market and just prevent development there at those certain locations, because it's crazy to approve a new development that we know it's going to be in 5 feet of water 50 years from now. AA will give us the funding opportunities to implement a lot of solutions that are going to come right out of Marin County here. I'm confident of that.
Kevin Haroff.
Thanks, Frank. Climate change is one of the issues that is most important to me. I've written on that subject. I've worked on that issue for many, many years as an environmental lawyer in San Francisco in the Bay Area. It's really a tremendously important issue for me. I manifest that significance in part because of my membership on the board of MCE Clean Energy. The Marin County Climate Action Plan identifies the promotion of renewable energy resources through efforts like Marin Clean Energy as the single most important that we can do to reduce our climate impact in this county. So I'm a big fan of renewable energy. As far as Measure AA, I applaud those who believe that Measure A will increase our ability to resist sea level rise. I've been very actively supportive of efforts within Marin County as a member of the Larkspur City Council to address sea level rise within Marin County. But I am not in support of regional efforts to extract money from everyone who lives in Marin County to basically to promote the response to sea level rise on the peninsula and the South Bay. I do not think that regional efforts to deal with this issue are the way to go. I believe in local control, local efforts to combat climate change and sea level rise. Thank you.
Next is Alex Easton-Brown.
AA was put together by corporate interests in the South Bay. It's an admirable goal. However, benefit assessment district would be a lot better where the actual owners of the shoreline would pay a proportionate amount to the benefit they're going to get. Google, Apple, Oracle, all own, Chevron, all own huge tracts of land on the bay, and they only have to pay $12 a year. And they get all us suckers out here paying $12 a year to make up for the difference. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, Dominic Grossi.
Okay. So I look at what C-SMART is doing right now and the recommendations they make. So I think it's very important that we adhere to those recommendations and listen very closely to what they have to say. These are the experts who know a lot more about climate change or sea level rise than probably any of us as individuals. And we need to make sure that those recommendations are put forth and executed into our local coastal plan to protect all of our coast throughout Marin County. The other thing, excuse me one second, to me that's really important, we need to look past just the sea level rise. We need to kind of look at what is causing that. We talk about greenhouse gas emissions and carbon. So something I'm really proud of that takes place throughout Marin County that we should all be proud of is the Marin Carbon Project that John Wick started many, many years ago. And we're working forward to continue to figure out where exactly we can sequester more carbon out of the air, which will hopefully save greenhouse gas emissions and prevent sea level rise. We're going to have some, we can't stop it, but we need to take a step in the right direction. And the Marin Carbon Project is an important part of that. And last but not least, Measure AA. I do support that. I've endorsed that measure. I think it's an important thing that we do. We only have about 44,000 acres left of current wetlands, and we need to get that number back up to about 100,000 so that we can help protect ourselves against sea level rise.
And Dominic, just explain what C-SMART refers to for people who aren't aware.
Collaboration, so it's take me a second to remember it all. Collaboration, for sea level, in Marin, area restoration team.
Okay.
Response team. I had to think for a minute.
Wendi Kallins. I won't ask you to unwind an acronym, okay?
Okay. I think the county is doing a really good job of creating collaboration and addressing sea level rise. I will leave it to Supervisor Sears, who is heading up that effort, to give you the details on that. I absolutely support Measure AA. I don't see how we're going to raise that kind of money locally of what we need to restore our wetlands, and our wetlands are the first line of defense against sea level rise. Actually, I will qualify it. The first line of defense is reducing greenhouse gases. I'm on the board of Sustainable Marin, and I've been promoting sustainability, well, since before it was even called sustainability, for the last 30 years. We really have to move beyond the paradigm of man versus nature, or defending nature from man, to recognize that we are nature. And our habitat and our activities need to be in balance with our ecosystem, and it thrives when it's in balance. That doesn't mean stopping human activity, but learning how to build ecologically, farm ecologically, and live ecologically.
Thank you, Wendi. Next, Tomas Kaselionis.
So I've spent the last 15 years deploying to the impacts of climate change, and in fact, the last 7 months I was on a super typhoon, 2 hurricanes, and then the fires in Lake and Calaveras counties. And so I have a very unique perspective on that. I really believe that when you look at, let's talk about sea level rise, that is actually a local issue, and I talked about this in a previous candidate event, is that if you actually do more for retention, whether they be rainwater collection or local retention of that rainwater, that's actually what contributes to sea surge and intercoastal surge, right? It's a localized event because weather systems pull from the ocean and bring that water inland. So you have to retain more so that you have less impact downrange. I actually disagree with AA. You can find federal funding. If you don't spend your life in Marin, you can find out that there are, in fact, projects that the government will fund. And in fact, you have more than $40 billion in unissued bonds that you've already been taxed for over the last decade or more that aren't being utilized. So let's get that money out of the coffers and into Marin wetlands restoration, where there's a great project right behind Home Depot right here in San Rafael that looks primed to be able to be done. Let's put that up and figure out what funding we can do for that. But I don't trust ABAG to manage that money, and I'm not going to give them a cent.
All right. Next, Dennis Rodoni.
I support Measure AA because it will help Marin be better prepared for sea level rise. I would point out that I'm the only candidate in my candidate statement that talked about climate change. So that's important to me, and it's important to the county. We have to realize what infrastructure is in danger, and we're doing that through the studies we're doing. We need to figure out if it needs to be raised or it needs to be moved. But the real puzzle is, where are we going to get the funds for the public needs, let alone the private needs? We need to talk about what's appropriate for new development in terms of sea level rise for the next 50 years. We shouldn't approve any development that's not in an elevation that would be appropriate for that time. We also need to talk about horizontal levees and other structures to protect our shorelines and to protect our wetlands. Thank you.
Brian Staley.
This is another subject that's important to put in context. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is saying essentially that we're talking about feet of sea level rise over the next couple of decades, not inches. So then the question immediately has to be asked, is wetland restoration really a reasonable approach? I'm an environmentalist, and so I absolutely believe that wetland restoration is a critical aspect because it's part of our ecosystem, and it represents not only a buffer for protecting us against some sea level rise, but the question is, does it really have an impact? I think it's critical for people to, for one thing, to go out to the Hamilton field and see the model that they have out there of it's essentially an example of the kind of restoration that they'll be doing. And ask yourself, is this really going to have a fundamental impact on sea level rise? We have to be extremely aggressive and proactive at looking at the infrastructure impacts and the kinds of things that we need to deal with, and I really don't think so far that the supervisors have done that effectively.
And Brian, yes or no on AA?
Right now, yes, but I think it's inadequate.
Mary?
All right, yes on AA. I think it's a really great opportunity to teach kids about watersheds and wetland restoration by having them save the 4 pennies a day or less that it's going to take to reach $12 a year. So just for that, that's why I support it. I think we should, make sure that we have local representation on the board as far as distribution of funds goes, and those are all things that need to be negotiated. But to do nothing it's way past time to do nothing. So it's better to have the money and then figure out how to spend it. That's one thing. And also, green streets. I'm a big proponent of green streets, slow rain movement. If you go to my Facebook page, you'll find that I've joined absolutely every page that has to do with that. And I'd love to talk more about that, but my time is up.
All right. Kate Sears.
So we're already experiencing the flooding impacts of sea level rise, certainly in southern Marin at the Manzanita-Pajono area and the Marin City exit ramp off of 101. And I'm working with Caltrans to address those flooding impacts. But the Bay Wave program that you heard about is a first really first once in a life, hopefully not once in a lifetime, but a first in our experience collaboration between the county and the cities and the towns along our bay shoreline in Marin to really assess together our vulnerability to sea level rise. These collaborations are the key to our ability to plan forward for our future and address the impacts of sea level rise. Also important to me is making sure that we can get pilot projects in the ground, whether it's for sediment enhancement, wetlands restoration, levee improvement, tide gates, what have you. We need to get those pilot projects in the ground, and I'm a strong supporter of Measure AA. We need this collaboration. As someone who serves on BCDC, I can tell you the 3 counties around the bay that will be most impacted by sea level rise are Marin, San Mateo, and Santa Clara. We are all in this together, and this is a measure that will help us work together to fund actual solutions.
Susan Kirsch.
So in the beginning of the introductions, we heard about seashells in Cincinnati. I'm originally from Minnesota, where our license plates say land of 10,000 lakes. Those 10,000 lakes are because of all the glaciers that were melting over a long period of time. And as someone who just graduated from the Environmental Forum of Marin, I'm reminded of the day that we heard about hydrology and the fact that the Farallon Islands used to be a part of the contiguous landmass with San Francisco. So we know that climate change has been going on forever. We do need to address greenhouse gases and the kind of immediate impact that is having. But there's we need to look at and remember that Mother Nature bats last, and we need to be working within her constraints to be able to come up with solutions for greenhouse gas emissions. Regarding Measure A, I think Measure A is a dreadful measure, not because it isn't important that we do bay restoration. That is absolutely essential. But to have taxation without representation, a board that doesn't impact everybody, and to have uneven taxation, it makes it unfair.
And for the follow-up here, I think my mic's off. I'd like to ask those who are in favor of Measure AA to respond to some of the honest criticism of it, that it is a parcel tax that, is unequal, or it can be seen as inequitable. And it's hard to determine if the money that Marin pays into the fund will actually be spent in Marin. So let me ask those of you who are supporting it to just respond to the questions that have been raised. And who'd like to go first? Brian.
One issue that's very important to note that you didn't mention is the fact that Marin does not have representation on the body that will be overseeing the restoration in the Bay Area. So that is certainly something that is a key concern. Marin County should, because we are contributing enormous amounts of money to the effort, we should have representation. So that is certainly something that we need to press on. And unfortunately, at this time, if we don't have representation, that's a fundamental issue that is a very strong concern.
And Kate Sears, do you have any concerns about the structure of this, and if the money will be properly spent in the interests of the Marin taxpayer?
So I do not have concerns about this. The enabling legislation provides that 1/2 of the monies raised by Measure AA will be distributed to each county based on its population. In addition to that, what is really key here is having projects, significant projects, that will be eligible for funding. Our Hamilton wetlands area is a significant, it's one of the largest wetlands restoration projects around San Francisco Bay. We are going to be very eligible for funding. We have other projects that we have already identified that will be good candidates for funding. I think we will get these monies. But we also need, I think, to think of these monies as a way to leverage other money. Measure AA will not provide all the money that we're going to need to address sea level rise, but it's a very significant step forward. We also need to extend our collaborations. We can do something here to improve the impacts of sea level rise here, but the water doesn't just go nowhere. Or we can suffer the consequences of something that Contra Costa County may do to address sea level rise goes there and the water comes towards us. If there was ever an issue in which it's crucial that we work together to make sure that we are planning together so we understand the impacts of what we are doing and how we are implicated, it's sea level rise and climate change. We need to take this step forward.
Okay. Over here, Katie Rice and Frank Egger both support AA. Could you tell me if you have any concerns or misgivings about the way it's written and the way it will be implemented?
No, as Supervisor Sears just explains, there's a formula that's put in place through the legislation and through the and through the ballot measure that prescribes where the money's going to go and how it's divided. And I am comfortable with that distribution of the funds. I also think that as a mechanism for raising funds, I don't know if there's a perfect tool, but I think it really was important for us to put in place as a Bay Area region a tool to raise monies from throughout the Bay Area region to deal with a problem that is impacting every single county along the Bay Shore. So I'm okay with the construct.
All right. And Frank, do you have any issues?
Well, you know, it would have been nice to have some of the commercial industrial properties pay more into this fund. But the architects of Measure AA must have foreseen some huge opposition from industrial commercial properties if, in fact, they were somehow elevated to paying more money than the $12 per parcel. So you know, I think it's going to work out for the best. You know, we have to place some confidence in those folks that are making these determinations. And although I'm not on that board, I'm confident it's going to work.
All right. Kevin Haroff has a concern?
I'm sorry, I can't sit here and listen to this. It's very clear to me that Measure AA has been promoted by the Bay Area Council, which represents Bay Area business interests, mostly to promote the interests of large corporations who have been developing properties in the South Bay and in Mountain View and in San Jose. This will not benefit Marin. We will not have representation on this board. I understand that there will be eligibility for grants, but those grants will go to the economic interests that are backing this measure that does not represent the interests of the people who live in Marin County. I cannot support it, even though it may be well-intended in some respects. This will not benefit Marin County.
All right. Tomas has a comment? Okay.
So I just want to remind everybody that the Corps of Engineers did the newest Hamilton project that got opened up last year. But you know, one factor, this is a sustainability event, and you might recall that we raised taxes for a Marin radio system that now has projected to have a 15% reduction in its coverage. You also have COM raising a bond for infrastructure. You have, at least in the Novato School District is going to go out for a bond. So tax compression and laying that on top of itself when you can't provide, and you know already, I'm telling you that by the state of California, you have $40 billion in school infrastructure sitting there unissued. That when you're not putting that money into effect, and if you look at the Highway 37, time's already up? Oh,
It's
shoot.
30 seconds.
I apologize.
Finish your thought.
Well, no, but Highway 37 was done with federal funds as well. So all of that wetland restoration was already done. So if we identify aggressively with supervisors or leaders who are willing to take those projects forward and say, fund our projects, they support our community, we should be doing that. And I agree with Mr. Haroff. ABAG was built by developers. That's why only new development is added for the benefit.
Thanks. Time. Wendi Kallins and then Susan Kirsch. Can you pass the mic, please?
Yeah, climate change knows no boundaries. And if we want to address the results of climate change, we need to know no boundaries too. This is a regional problem, and it affects us on a regional level. And the idea that, well, if Marin doesn't get enough money, we shouldn't fund this, ignores the fact that something that benefits something on the other side of the bay from Marin also benefits Marin. We have to, again, think systemically and act systemically if we are going to address problems that are systemic. Thank you.
Susan Kirsch, 30 seconds. Please.
So I think this is an example of how when we had Plan Bay Area first roll out, it was with the idea that there would be PDAs, Plan Development Areas, and people rose up saying we don't want the regional entities dictating what we have in our communities. this is going to be another one of those kinds of regional powers that we are losing our access because we don't vote for representatives to sit on that board. Even if Marin were to get a representative, are we willing to say someone else should be working with this organization without their representative?
And Kate Sears has a quick one.
Just very quick, I want to remind everyone that the Bay Restoration Authority was really promoted, and its creation was engendered by Save the Bay, which is an organization that has never been at the front of promoting corporate development interests. So, and I also want to, if I can, just to refer back to this idea of benefit districts. You know, one of the challenges of really doing education about climate change and sea level rise and the impacts is getting beyond the idea that only people who have property on the water are the ones that are going to benefit from adaptation steps that we take to address sea level rise. We are all in this. You live on a hill, you've got to drive somewhere, and chances are it's flooding.
Okay, thank you. So, our next topic question area is a little bit lighter, and it came from the students of the Marin School of Environmental Leadership. And as students, they're committed to sustainable practices like waste reduction, recycling, walking and biking, and growing food organically. The question is, what do you do personally to create a sustainable future? So please open up a little bit and tell us about some of your personal practices, and I'm going to start with the guy who swam here tonight, Tomas.
The skill is keeping your suit pressed. So you'll see I'm the only person without paper up here. A couple of summers ago, I helped close down the Samoa pulp mill up in the Eureka Humboldt Bay. Paper production is one of the least environmentally friendly processes that exists. It smells, the health hazards are incredible, and if I gave you the list, I'd be here all night with the number of hazmat items that were found there. And I'm a subject matter expert in hazmat and environmental response. I've torn down a fence, and I've rebuilt my deck, and I've recovered all of that material at my home so I can build new garden boxes my wife would like me to complete this weekend, so hopefully I will. But you won't see my signs on the side of the road. I'm not producing any paper signs. You're not going to get mailers in the mail because I'm not producing any mail. You can go to my website. You can go to my Facebook page. I'm producing videos and everything else. But if you want leadership that's going to support the environment, I'm going to embody that. Thank you.
Okay, Dennis, you're next.
I certainly recycle, avoid unnecessary driving when I can. As a contractor, that's a little difficult sometimes. We have a garden, but most important, as a contractor doing remodel work mostly, I insist with my employees, with my clients, that we do a recycling program. It's a free recycling program that I privately do, similar to Madeline Hope's Recycle Circus, but I just do it all year round. And she can attest to that because I used the front of my house for doing that, and I've had literally whole houses go elsewhere and be reused, and I'm very proud of that personally. But most important, as a supervisor, I will take action to reduce carbon footprint of all county activities. I will seek a goal of net zero emissions from county activities, including making all county facilities more energy efficient, increase our use of green energy, purchase only efficient vehicles and equipment, and reduce our waste to as close to zero as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Staley.
I have nearly 3 decades in the green construction and sustainable design fields. And during that time, I've had a pretty substantial impact in all the structures that I've been involved in, reducing toxicity, tremendous impacts that I've had in terms of saving energy, the using sustainably harvested resource materials. And in that time, every one of my clients has gotten back to me over time and has been incredibly happy with the results that they've received. The amount of energy they've saved typically is anywhere between 10 and 20%, which makes an enormous impact in your regular bills. And the reduction of toxicity and informing people about the options to avoid toxic materials has also made a huge impact in people's lives.
And my trick follow-up, have you flossed recently?
That was a trick.
My wife's a dental hygienist. Yes. Absolutely.
See what we learned?
Oh, is that what that was all about? Okay. Well, I don't eat red meat. I think that's it. Thanks. When I went to UC Santa Cruz, because I went there for a couple of years, that was when I was first introduced to vegan food. And as much as I would like to say that I'm vegan, I'm mostly vegan, but I do eat eggs, and I recycle. I don't drive unless I absolutely have to. I do a lot of walking, usually in the street. And, so it's a personal commitment. But what I'd like to say is thank you for that question, because I think it's really important that we see each of us can make the difference, and we don't always constantly look to government to have all the answers. It's up to a personal commitment that every one of us makes. And there's a saying I like that I've posted on my blog: everyone can make a difference, and everyone should try. Or each of us can make a difference. Anyway, I screwed that up, but here you go.
Kate Sears.
All right, so I recycle, I drive a Prius, I walk a lot, I take public transit whenever I can, and I do grow food organically in my backyard. I don't eat red meat, I conserve water, I turn off the lights when I leave the room, I wash my clothes in cold water, and I keep the heat down low, and all these things I was taught to do by my mother. So I'm a deep green customer of MCE, and I also chair the board of MCE. So we're really pushing, as you know, to develop local solar projects and expand our energy efficiency programs. There's more I want to do. I'd like to have a gray water system at home, and I'd love to have a rainwater capture system at home. But for all of you activists and young people in the room, what I really want to say that we need to do is push for extended producer responsibility. So all of our product manufacturers are responsible for the entire life cycle of the products that they create, especially take-back recycling and final disposal of all those products and the packaging they come in. That will make a huge impact on our environment. So let's get to it.
Susan Kirsch.
In 2013, I installed solar panels on my roof, and that was a part of leading, a long-range plan that last December I was able to buy a used hybrid Prius plug-in. So I'm now able to do almost all of my driving with a plug-in Prius. I'm an organic gardener. I have raspberries, strawberries, blueberries in my garden, all producing right now. I have a salad garden kind of thing. I compost regularly all the garden scraps. I recycle. For 15 years when I was working, I either walked, biked, took the bus or the ferry to get to work. I currently catch the water before I take a shower, so I have the cold water that I can take out and put into the bird bath. And perhaps the greatest contribution that I'm really, really pleased with is that I have a daughter who is the CEO of a company called Powerhouse, which is working towards a mission to have the world have access to solar.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to start on this side with Wendi Kallins and go across.
Yeah, I put on an energy fair back in 1980. You remember the energy crisis back in the 70s? I also belonged to an organization that was weatherizing houses and putting up solar panels. I put solar panels on my house in 1995. And drive a Prius, of course, take transit, walk bike whenever I can. But the thing that I am really the most proud of, and I love this question because I have worked with these MCEL students. They're amazing students. And we have reached tens of thousands of students in this county. We're not, Safe Routes to Schools doesn't just get kids to walk and bike to school. We actually go in and get them to think about global warming, greenhouse gas emissions, and what they can do to reduce their climate footprint. And we have reached so many students and changed their attitude about things, and we have testimonials from them. With MCEL itself, we put on a great transit race. A lot of these kids who participated in it had never taken transit before, and after they did our race, they said, yeah, we're going to start taking transit now that we know how to use it.
Dominic Grossi.
Yeah, as a dairyman, I feel like I've spent my entire life
doing what you need to do sustainably in order to continue and thrive in agricultural production. So we compost our manure, use it in our organic gardens, as was mentioned by others. But we go beyond that too. We use thousands of yards of cow manure, and after composting it and killing all the bacteria, we're able to use it for bedding for our cows. So we're able to reuse their manure for them for bedding. We reuse all of our water for cleaning out all of the barns. So after we capture water in our ponds, we reuse it first to clean the barns, then we save it into another pond and we use it for irrigation. So there's lots of different things that we do. And in our entire ranch, we talk about organic gardens. Well, over the course of the next few months, come October 1st, our entire dairy will be organic. So those are the things that I look forward to moving on to and working sustainably.
Thank you. Alex Easton-Brown.
Yes, I built my house using a lot of recycled materials, mostly lumber and architectural features. I've heated my home for the last 40 years using lumber that I've harvested on my property, and so my power bill is really small.
Kevin Haroff.
Well, this is a question that resonates with me. So we're all doing self-serving answers here in response to this question. I have to start by doing that myself. I'm very fortunate to be the managing partner of one of the nation's most prominent environmental law firms, where we encourage environmental values every day through the use of renewable energy resources, reduction of waste generation, promotion of recycling of electronic and other disposable materials, and preservation of the quality of our water resources. But to be self-serving, I have to say the most important thing that I do in terms of my commitment to encouraging the promotion of environmental values is through my daughter, Sarah. 14 years ago, my wife and I went to Chongqing province in southwest China, and we brought our daughter back from one of the most polluted areas on the planet. And she has been raised in an environment, literally an environment, where we have been able to encourage her to promote the environmental values that my wife and I have shared during our lives and will carry on to the next generation. I cannot think of anything more important to promote environmental values, sustainability, than to bring that to my daughter and to carry it on to the next generation. Thank you.
Frank Hager.
Fairfax is a leader in sustainability. You all know that. It's something we live by. It's like inbred. A number of us do rainwater catchment. We're very frugal. Reuse, recycle. That's the motto of Fairfax. And Fairfax is the home of Good Earth Natural Food Store. GMO-free Marin came from Fairfax. That's where it originated. So listen, we are way ahead of the curve in Fairfax. But as an elected official, in 2006, I made a proposal that San Quentin State Prison flush their 3,000 toilets with treated wastewater from the Central Women's Sanitation Agency sewer treatment plant. San Quentin is the largest user of water. I can't give you the gallons, but it's huge. I've been working on it for 10 years. And this year, we have finally received an approval from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. If, in fact, Central Women's Sanitation Agency can supply the amount of wastewater they need, treated wastewater, we've got to raise it to tertiary levels, they will flush their 3,000 toilets with treated wastewater, not potable water.
And Katie Rice.
Yeah, so sustainability starts with the individual, and like many folks here, I've raised by environmentalists and have been actually doing the water thing, not using chemicals in the house or outside of the house. The lawn is gone. More important, we talked to, really it's about our buying habits. What are we, looking for the products that don't have the heavy packaging, buying locally grown products, supporting our local stores. All that personal behavior is so important towards a sustainable future. And then the second part is what you can't do on your own. How can you help other people change? How can we further our behavior changes and others as well? And I think that happens through supporting and participating in great local organizations like Sustainable Fairfax, like Sustainable Marin, that are all about educating and encouraging and helping folks change their behaviors towards supporting a sustainable future.
And instead of following up on these controversial answers that we've just heard, I have two additional questions from the students. And I'm going to assign one of them to the candidates for District 4 and the other to the candidates from the other two districts. So for District 4 candidates, what is your view on the legal issue between cattle farms and Point Reyes National Seashore? And let me start with Alex Easton-Brown. Somebody pass him the mic. Thank you.
Except for the lawsuit, I don't really think there is an issue. It's unfortunate the lawsuit was filed.
Okay. Dominic Grossi.
I'll try to go a little more in depth than that. As a rancher, what's going on out at Point Reyes National Seashore is extremely important to me to continue to protect the ranchers. They are a very significant part of our history, the entire heritage of the Point Reyes National Seashore. They didn't protect that land for the last 150 years because it was a park. It was ranchers who did that. And it wasn't until 1962 when the legislation was written that it became a park. Okay, but it was written with the intent as a collaborative agreement working with ranchers and the Sierra Club to come to a compromise to prevent development. They did that, and the ranchers stepped up and said, okay, we will sell our property so you guys can create this park, but we want to make sure that us and our children will always be allowed to stay here. So that has become the tip of the controversy because a lot of people think that once those original leases ran out, they should be gone. I don't believe that. It was always the intent, and there's a lot of testimony from the 1961 hearings that said they expected this ranching to continue in perpetuity. And I think we need to stand up, county, environmentalists, and the ranchers and the Park Service, fight the lawsuit, get through it, and make sure that we have ranching in perpetuity.
Wendi Kallins.
Well, to add on to that, because I definitely agree with everything that Dominic just said, and I've been listening to what the people who put this lawsuit to us are saying, and it really is evident that there is an issue with ranching in all the national parks, and that we are a test case. And Huey Johnson, who was a giant in the environmental field, and I'm very upset that he would come after us like this, because we are a model of sustainability in our ranching in Marin County. And instead, he said if they succeed here, then they're going to do the same thing in all the other national parks. And I really think we need to promote ourselves as a model for sustainability and how we can live with the natural environment, promoting our agriculture. We have organic agriculture throughout the region, and if we lose 20% of our ranches, we could see the end of agriculture in Marin County. And that's something we should be very concerned about. So our supervisors had to join in the lawsuit. It was very important that we have a voice there, and a very strong voice.
So I've been a very strong critic of the leadership or the lack of leadership from both local organizations, one of which is running for office, and others in the federal government. They should have legislated past the terms. And I support ranching, I support their diversity, but what the case is bringing up is they didn't support it in legislation. So you've had some leadership failures, and we have to correct that. And you need to elect people into office who are willing to do the hard things. It is really hard to make legislation, but you have to be willing to do it and stand up and say, look, this is what Marin believes in, so we're going to do it. We're going to come together as a group and say, no, it's not correct. We're going to support ranching. You need to codify it, not just ask them questions and hold them to bureaucrats to their spoken word. We need it written down and codified. So I agree with that, and I really hope that we don't lose ranching in Marin, because like Wendi said, if we lose what's in Point Reyes, it will seriously impact our dairy industry in Marin.
Dennis Rodoni.
West Marin ranching is the fabric of Marin, what makes Marin special. It's the reason visitors come here. It's the reason that Marin people come to live here. And so we need to protect it at all costs. We need to have 20-year leases, because any good business plan needs a long lease to do the planning. The lawsuit is by three national environmental groups. It's not supported by any local environmental group. Eventually, we'll get through it and we'll work through it. The necessity is, though, that we do it in a timely manner, because there's all kinds of stress on the farms and ranchers in the meantime while this lawsuit's being discussed. I recently called for Huey Johnson to withdraw his suit and sit down at the table and discuss it with environmental groups, the Park Service, and the county to see if we could come to some conclusion. Because what's going to happen is a judge will leave that discussion at some point, and there will be solutions, there will be negotiations, but I don't think we can wait that long, because they're talking about maybe 8 years for those discussions to take place, and ranchers can't wait that long.
And Brian Staley?
I'd like to compliment the county for getting behind the ranchers. At this point, the county has made a commitment that their legal staff will be supporting ranchers in this lawsuit. Although, as I had mentioned previously, I am an environmentalist, this particular lawsuit is rather concerning. The ranches in West Marin represent a fairly substantial amount of our local economy. They also are a major employer, and many of the ranches have been there for more than 150 years. So this is a very long-standing legacy. Unfortunately, this entire dynamic took place at the moment that the national parks are in the process of recreating a series of leases, which historically had been in segments. And the federal parks now plan to issue all leases simultaneously. So the ranchers are very nervous, and unfortunately at this moment is when the lawsuit takes place. So it really intensified the dynamic between ranchers and the parks. Lastly, I would like to say that we all use the parks, and that ranchers do certainly have various environmental impacts that we need to be cognizant of.
Mary Tamburo.
Okay, I do support the ranchers. I support the lawsuit. I won't repeat anything that's been said. I'm really great to see all the wonderful leadership that we do have across the county and across all our districts, that we're all on the same page as far as this is concerned, because we need food. We can't eat air. And I know that sounds wacky, but I'm just trying to be funny because it's so serious. It's a serious thing. As someone who's had dealt with a small business, and we had issues with our landlord, and it destroyed our business, and it impacted us for many years and still impacts us. So I support the ranching. I support small business.
And next, the question is for the candidates in Districts 2 and 3, and I'll start with Susan Kirsch. What actions will you take to support low-income communities such as the Canal and Marin City with the increasing threat of sea level rise on their homes?
Well, I've been very involved with Marin City and have been having a number of meetings with them around both the housing and the sea level rise. So I think to continue with those conversations, looking at how do they both preserve like many of our communities have single ways in and out of the community. So access, getting in and out, is really important to them. And the possibility of flooding is of great concern to them, as is the possibility of losing their low-income housing there in Marin City. So I think the people at least who live in the high-rise areas, and there are many of them, have some protection from the sea level rise, but the issues of how to get in and out is something that they're really deeply concerned about.
And Kate Sears.
So I've been working with our Department of Public Works and Caltrans over the course of the last year to really address the flooding issues that in the December 2014 storms isolated Marin City as a community. They could not get in and out. And you'll note that this winter, the shopping center owners put up what are really temporary water-filled barriers around the pond there, around Marin City, and that had a very positive effect. We also, through working with Caltrans, will be replacing and expanding the drainage ditches that go right along the exit, and that should really go a long way to addressing the flooding. We're working with the shopping center owners. It's private property, but they've agreed to collaborate with the county to send cameras down to find out what is the state of those pipes, so that we're addressing not only the water coming up from the bay through sea level rise, but the water coming down through the watershed. No one in Marin City is going to lose their housing. Over the last year, there has been an effort through Marin Housing Authority to find a sustainable future for public housing in Marin City that's no longer being supported by HUD. This is federally supported public housing that's no longer being supported at a sufficient level. The goal there is to find a sustainable future with one-to-one replacement for everyone who lives there. And Target is coming in with a significant grocery store component, so if there is flooding problem, at least there's access to food, which there's not been. Thank you.
And we'll go over to the Ross Valley candidates, starting with Kevin, on the same question about sea level rise, in this case, the canal area in your district.
There's actually a couple of components to your question, and I'd like to address them in a somewhat discrete fashion. First is the sea level rise issue. One of the things that I've been very grateful to have the opportunity to do, again, as part of my membership on the Larkspur City Council, is participate in a multi-jurisdictional effort across the municipalities and the county to develop a vulnerability assessment for all of the Bayshore properties and areas that are subject to sea level rise risks, including the low-income areas that may be particularly affected by that. We will complete that vulnerability assessment during the course of this year. We will then be developing strategies that will help address the challenges that sea level rise confronts all of the communities in Marin County. As far as places like the Canal District, the county has actually failed over time to provide the economic support that those communities need, not just with respect to sea level rise, but with respect to the overall conditions of the communities that exist in those areas. And Marin City is the perfect example of that. HUD has failed to provide the funding that it needs to provide in order to support and sustain those communities. The county has not provided an adequate backup in terms of the financial resources that it can provide, and yet we still have discretionary funding that the Board of Supervisors can provide to their own pet projects. They should be directed to distressed communities within Marin County. It hasn't happened. That will change if I am elected to the Marin County Board of Supervisors.
Frank Egger.
Sea level rise is coming, and I've seen a preliminary mapping for San Rafael, and it includes much of the canal area. I don't know if levees will help at all along the shoreline there, but we're going to have to address it. I don't have the solutions right now, but hopefully with the $12 tax, AA, we're going to have some funding available to address those kinds of issues. We can't create our own Venice right here in San Rafael, but we're going to have to get folks in and out of their affordable units, and I'm prepared to deal with it.
Katie Rice, please.
Yeah, the Bay Wave study speaks to this issue wherever we are along the eastern shoreline in Marin County. The Canal District isn't actually in District 2, but those folks are residents of San Rafael and residents of Marin County, and as we deal with this issue, we're going to have to deal with it across city and county jurisdictional boundaries. But the canal does feed into Mahone Creek, and that is impacted by sea level rise and by the tides. And that's a project that I'm actually have been discussing with the city of San Rafael and SMART as they look at making their improvements there. Down in the Corte Madera area, there's the boardwalk that's going to be impacted by sea level rise. This is one of those areas that could benefit through the Measure A, the double A measure, with regards to horizontal levees and work there, marsh restoration. So everything has to be looked at collaboratively between the city, the counties, and the residents, frankly, and none of the solutions are easy, and it's going to take a lot of work on all our parts.
Okay, thank you. Next topic is about an environmental, housing, and social justice issue. For years, the county has failed to develop a comprehensive response to our unhoused population, the homeless. And rising rents are adding to the crisis. Some people see Ritter Center as a magnet for transients, but only 15% of Ritter's clients are from outside Marin County. The question is, as a supervisor, do you think Ritter Center should be moved from downtown San Rafael? And will you support the creation and funding for a year-round shelter to replace the REST program? And I'm going to randomly start over here with Brian Staley.
Yes, I support both of those programs. With regard to the location of Ritter Center, I think that needs to be looked at very closely. Obviously, wherever that is located, there needs to be social services available. There needs to be a variety of other support mechanisms that are located near it. So right now, I just simply don't know enough about what the options are and where it could be moved to answer definitively. But that particular facility provides an enormous amount of very effective services. You can get food through there. You can get a number of different services and recommendations for all kinds of other services. I also do want to mention that Laura's Law with regard to homelessness is something we need to really consider. It's one of the many tools that is, I think, is key to being able to work with, in particular, the homeless. And lastly, homelessness is very complex. It's socioeconomic. It has to deal with addiction, and it has to deal with a lot of factors, including mental health. And so that needs to be a holistic process.
We'll go to Dennis next and come around this way.
Thank you. So I've been a proponent of Laura's Law, and I think it's one of the important tools that we need to have available to us for the homeless. Certainly we need to look at a central service center that will give a homeless person all the services necessary that the county can provide. That should be in conjunction with all our cities, much like the REST program is funded now by cooperating cities and county. I think the service center needs to be funded in the same way. I think everyone needs to participate and provide services and provide resources. Certainly the county needs to take the lead on that. Certainly the most difficult part of that will be finding a suitable site. One of the sites I've heard recently discussed in San Rafael is right in that climate change flood zone that we need to deal with. So that may or may not be a good site unless we designed it in a proper way. Thank you.
Tomas Kaselionis.
So yes and yes. I've long supported the permanent rest solution, and I do believe they need to expand the program. Currently, it's only for 60 beds, so we do need a permanent solution in Marin. I think one is missing. A long time ago, I lobbied to try and convert the bachelor's officers' quarters at Hamilton Field, which has been vacant for well over a decade, to reconvert that to veteran housing, and I was unsuccessful in doing that because Nevada wants a B&B up there or some sort of conference center. But I think we can go and try to make that investment. There are a lot of abandoned homes currently by the Coast Guard on that facility, both the apartment complexes as well as the beautiful homes that are along the boulevard there. We need to look at some of those investments, and I brought that up earlier, but I believe that those investments in our community pay us dividends. There are people that are employed and still find themselves homeless for whatever situation, and we have to find them a way of doing that. I talked about tax compression, and we talk about the rise in rents. It becomes more expensive because we keep adding taxation. Just throwing money at a solution is not always the solution. It is about strong leadership, and it is about electing people who are willing to do the difficult things, and I am.
Thank you. Wendi Kallins next.
Yeah, Ritter House, as has been stated, mostly serves people who are actually residents, and a lot of them are residents of the downtown. And they need accessibility to get to those services. If you move Ritter House somewhere too far away that doesn't even have good transit available to them, you have a situation where the actual people who need the services cannot access those services. So yes, Ritter House needs to stay where it is, and it needs to stop being blamed for the problems that are in the downtown. The homeless population does need I do support a year-round homeless facility, but I also think we need to recognize that the homeless is not one homogeneous group of people. There are people who are down on their luck, who have lost their homes, who, resulting from rising rents or whatever reason, they lost a job. There are people with substance abuse problems. There are people with mental illness problems. And that's a very different population, and it needs a very different solution. And my time is up. Otherwise, I'd say more.
Dominic Grossi, please.
Thank you. So yeah, the Ritter House is really a great program down here in San Rafael. So I think we need to work really closely with the city of San Rafael to find out if there is another location that we could move it to. I wouldn't step in and say, hey, let's move it and get it out of downtown. But we need to work together. That's a collaborative effort. Homelessness is not just in San Rafael, it's everywhere in Marin. And we need to work together to find the right places to get homeless people. And I think just as importantly, it's everything that goes with the homeless. And we talked about healthcare and making sure that wherever it's Ritter House or wherever they end up moving, if they move, they have to have all the services there that they need, whether it's the medications that they might need for mental health issues, or the transit they might need to get to work. As Tomas mentioned, that some people do have jobs, but they don't have a place to live. So that moves you on to the full-time living quarters. And I do believe we should work together You know, all the cities have to get together with the county, and the county should take the lead on this, but find the right place. That might be the most difficult part, is finding the right place. But I think that comes with stipulations. If we find that place, we need to make sure that the people that are staying in that housing keep the jobs, that we can help find them, and they stay on their medications if they need them.
Alex Easton-Brown.
I think Ritter Center does a great job. I proposed using Marin Commons, which is an empty office building shared by the sheriff right now. They have all the facilities you need as a homeless service center. We can consolidate our services there. And, you know, about 60% of the homeless, at least in the experience in Salt Lake City, were able to be dispensed with by contacting their families and friends and giving them bus tickets home. So the hardcore homeless, of course, are the people that require mental services, and the out-of-luck folks who have lost their jobs and lost their homes. Those are the people we need to focus on.
Kevin Haroff.
Thank you. I think the Ritter Center is a valuable community asset, and I support its retention within the community to support the mission that it's been embarked upon. I support the REST program, and I support exploring opportunities to find a permanent home to house the folks that that program has been supporting over time. I also want to make very clear that I support Laura's Law. I think it's an important thing that we should be doing as a community to help address this challenging problem, and the Board of Supervisors has failed to take a strong position to adopt Laura's Law. That will change if I have an opportunity to serve you all on the Board of Supervisors. The most important thing is the failure of the county and the Board of Supervisors to take responsibility for homelessness within our community. The county has deferred to San Rafael and Novato to basically say, that's your problem, you take care of it. The civil grand jury has called out the county and the County Board of Supervisors in particular for its lack of leadership on the homelessness issue within this community. That has got to change. If we have a change in the leadership within this community, we will have a change in our ability to deal with this crushing problem of homelessness in Marin County. Thank you.
Frank Hager.
There may well be a $2 billion state bond for homeless shelters. And if in fact it passes, Marin and Santa Fe need to have a fair share of those funds. We need a full-time homeless shelter. I included that in my brochure, which was printed, I don't know, a few months ago. Too much of the burden for homeless services has been placed on the city of Santa Fe. Some of the neighborhoods here in Santa Fe have real security issues and safety issues. Parents are concerned about their kids walking to school or walking to the park or walking to Safeway or 7-Eleven. We need to feel secure in our homes. That's really important. Ritter House has done a great job. I worked at downtown Santa Fe for 20 years. Actually in Santa Fe for 40, but downtown Santa Fe for 20 years. 10 years on Ritter Street. And they provide an admirable service. But the fact is, they've outgrown, their facility has outgrown the services they provide. And so some of those services are going to have to be moved, and Ritter House is going to have to get back to its original mission.
Katie Rice.
I support the relocation of Ritter. Ritter is providing excellent services to a range of people, but it has outgrown its current facility. The key is finding the right location that works both for the clients and for the surrounding community or neighborhood, wherever it gets placed. So we have to find the appropriate site. I also think we should look at this as an opportunity to potentially co-locate Ritter with some other services, whether it's jobs training or linkage to some other social services. I think that's really key. And along with that, the REST program, I think, is extremely important. It's providing really critically needed emergency housing, which we don't have enough of, and we are going to continue to need emergency housing if we don't have enough of the other kind of housing that folks of low income and or with mental health issues or needs have. So we have to find a permanent location for REST, but we also have to work on expanding capacity within that continuum of care for mental health services. We've got 504 people housed right now, all the way in lockdown acute facilities, all the way down to board and care, permanent supportive housing. We need more capacity.
Next, Susan Kirsch.
So I think ultimately it's up to San Rafael to decide what they want to do with Ritter House, but I think the part of it that appeals to me, that I think is an important part, is that we do provide services that are easily accessible to the people who most need them. So it doesn't really make sense to me that we begin to try to isolate some of the homeless problems, that rather that we look to disperse it. And this was one of the issues that came up in the meeting with the Marin Organizing Committee the other night, is about that tension between needing emergency services, but that we need a clearer definition if emergency is 3 days or 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years, and if it's permanent accommodations, we need to look at the funding issue. And so one of the words that has not come up in this whole circle is, where does the funding come from? If we're going to buy, where do we find the money to buy the land, to get the permits and fees, to do the building as the immediate things? Where does the money come from to furnish and do the beds and the stoves and refrigerators? And then where do the day-to-day services come from for social workers or for food and those kinds of provisions? So there's a big question that we need to keep that question of funding, or where does the funding come from, to be able to answer the question.
Kate Sears.
Thank you. So I strongly believe that we need to have a permanent homeless shelter, and that shelter needs to be close to the services that are already being provided by the county and being provided by Ritter, which is provides invaluable services to our homeless residents. The county also provides a whole menu of services because, as we know, the reasons for homelessness are various. And our county recently expanded the scope of the mental health services that we're providing. Our Health and Human Services Department added on 10 positions so that we can really strengthen our streets teams and the one-on-one individual interactions that it's been shown folks who have mental health issues benefit from the most. So the conversations between the county and San Rafael about a location for a homeless shelter have been challenging. I'm cautiously optimistic that we are moving in a positive direction, and we will be able to find a location that is close to transit to be convenient, is large enough to combine all the services that our homeless population needs, and provides a home for Ritter as well. We will make this happen. I think the REST program needs to be incorporated into those services. That's a very valuable program for our county. And I'm out of time.
Mary Tamburo.
Okay. Well, again, I won't repeat a lot of what has been said, but I do want to bring up the subject of social enterprise. Not sure who's familiar with that, but Homeward Bound in Marin is a really excellent example of the use of a social enterprise. I do, as far as the question goes, I think Ritter Center's doing a great job, and we should support them. We definitely shouldn't close their current facility until they're able to find a new facility and relocate that, and where it's located near needed services. But homelessness is it's a problem in that we need to address the core of what is causing homelessness. We have many different factors that are contributing to that. One is the rising cost of housing, which we've already discussed about affordable housing. But I've been homeless more than one occasion, and I wasn't abusing any substances of any kind. I was trying to escape an abusive situation. So we need to, again, address the core, and it's a multi-pronged approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I have a series of questions from the audience, and I want to start with one that was referenced by a number of the candidates in this last pass. And it relates to treatment for mentally ill people and the Laura's Law, which is a state law that can be enabled at the county level. And I'd like to start with the two supervisors because clearly the other candidates are criticizing the votes that you made. Only Damon Connolly voted for the implementation of Laura's Law, and I believe that the remainder of the board felt that the comments and the advice from Dr. Colfax, the county health director, caused them to pause before pushing this forward.
First, an explanation, please, before we start the clocks. The definition of the law.
Excuse me. I didn't call on you, sir. But thank you for your advice, okay? May I ask, what would you like in terms of a definition? I think most of the people here know what Laura's Law is. Laura's Law provides for involuntary commitment, if you will, to outpatient mental health care for a period of time. Do I have that right?
It does not compel treatment. The patient still needs to agree to treatment.
Okay. Do we have enough understanding in the room? I don't want to ignore the concern.
I'm happy to give a definition.
Okay, why don't you go ahead? That'll clarify it.
All right, loud, Barbara.
Do you need a microphone?
Yes.
Yeah, let's get her a microphone.
Maybe I do.
Can you hand that to her?
You are an advocate, but we'll listen to her point of view and acknowledge it as such.
Thank you so much. Yes, I am an advocate, and I'm also the mother of a grown son with severe mental illness. So that's how I got interested in this. But what Laura's Law is, in a nutshell, it is a specifically. Hello. Oh,
Go
there
ahead.
it is. Okay. It's a California state law passed in 2002. Is specifically designed for, oh no, a senior moment. Oh no. Specifically designed for the homeless, severely mentally ill, and the near homeless who are resistant to treatment. And it offers them intensive case management. It's a good thing where 18 counties now have.
Ma'am, you're going beyond the definition.
Oh, okay.
You're advocating, so
all right.
please.
There's a strict criteria. There's 8 criteria that must be made. This is for the people who we see in downtown streets all the time. So.
Okay, I'll stop you there. And Supervisor Rice, if you'd like to respond to her characterization, I would welcome that. And then I'd like to hear your comments, yes. And give her a minute and a half, please.
All right, so Laura's Law, or assisted outpatient treatment, as Barbara just explained, is, to be more clear, it's a tool that allows folks who are severely mentally ill and meet a certain criteria, and it has to do with having refused treatment over a certain period of time, having been hospitalized and or incarcerated for actions that put them in those situations, but a person who continues to refuse treatment that's offered. Laura's Law provides for a system to be set up by which that person would be taken through the courts and brought before a judge, and the judge would give this person a choice of treatment or no, or the idea is the judge's robe, it's called the black robe effect, compels a person to make a decision to finally accept treatment. Laura's Law does not compel treatment. Someone who's a candidate who qualifies under all the criteria, goes through the system, can still refuse treatment. That said, it has been seen to be successful for some individuals. Now can I explain the supervisor? Okay. So what was compelling to me in January when the board considered whether or not to adopt Laura's Law at this time, and that was in January 2016, what was compelling to me in saying no, not now, was the fact that we are at capacity in our mental health system for the severely mentally ill. We can bring new folks into treatment, but we don't have the right kind of housing or facility for those people to get into in order to couple both the medical treatment, if they're accepting treatment at that time, and the support service to ensure their success. So to me, it made sense first to invest the money that was necessary to increase our capacity to treat the severely mentally ill with the services and with the housing they need first. Make the investment there first to expand to capacity before we adopt Laura's Law. And we did say at that board meeting in January of 2016 that we would revisit Laura's Law in 2017. 1, towards seeing if our capacity had been built up, and 2, towards seeing if we were making progress with some of these individuals who we know are on the street. There's about a half a dozen of them who are potentially candidates for Laura's Law.
Okay, thank you very much. And Supervisor Sears, your comment on this?
Yes, thank you very much. So what was compelling to me about Laura's Law and what I see as the strength of Laura's Law is the intensive case management. And this is already an approach that our county has been working with. But in thinking about it, we realized we really needed to expand our teams and our intensive case management. And that's why we added, our board provided funding to add the 10 new positions that I spoke about a minute ago, so that we really have a more robust case management program that can get to folks in need. One of the reasons that I thought that was the place to start was there is concern from our staff that because of the very stringent qualification eligibility standards in Laura's Law, not everyone on our streets who needs the assistance would actually qualify, and that there would be funding put in to essentially create a court-serving bureaucracy, and that it was better for us to start by really fortifying our case management and the treatment that we were able to provide. If we find that that's not having a good enough result, and other communities that have adopted Laura's Law have had better results, we left the door open to reconsider.
Thank you. And now I'd like to recognize those who advocate for Laura's Law. Just raise your hand, and I'd like to give you each 30 seconds to give us a brief comment on why you support it or why you don't agree with the supervisors. Frank, we'll start with you.
I appeared at the Board of Supervisors meeting to support their implementation of Laura's Law. The tragedy of Marin County is we will have almost $1 billion in a brand new hospital here in Green Bay, and there is not one bed increase in the mental health facilities over there at Marin General Hospital. $1 billion, and they've ignored mental health issues here in Marin County. So yes on Laura's Law, and we've got to get that change over there at Marin General Hospital.
Kevin Haroff.
Actually, Marin General has not ignored mental health services. Part of their build out for their facilities will allow them to continue to provide the services that they have. That said, our current Board of Supervisors represented here tonight have it backwards. Laura's Law should be adopted first. We should have that program in place. If we need the infrastructure to support its implementation, we should figure out a way of doing it. We should not punt on the adoption of a law that will actually help us address the homelessness problem in our community. It is a failure of leadership that the County Board of Supervisors has refused to step up to the plate, adopt that law, and take the appropriate steps to implement it now.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to speak to that? Dennis Rodoni?
I certainly respect the supervisor's decision. I would have been one supervisor that would have been voting with Supervisor Connolly, though, because I think it is an important tool that we need to have. And quite honestly, the number of people that could be helped with it is indifferent to me. If one person could be helped with it, it may be worth having. And that's really where I come down on this. And the same thing with a homeless service center. We can't always look at the money that these things are going to cost. We need to look at the most efficient way to build things and find the money to build them.
Brian Staley?
It's also important to note that this is not just a governmental issue. This is not something that only government has the ability to implement. Families who are with their wits' end and who are dealing with a family member who is very severely mentally ill and refusing to take medication, or in a situation where they need additional intervention, the intensive case management allows for a really robust way to have the situation, or to take the individual and really convince them that medication is the way to go, and it's incredibly effective.
Do I see Susan Kirsch? Did you want to comment?
Well, I am not in favor of Laura's Law. Do you want to transition to that?
Oh, sure. Why don't you? We didn't hear from you, so I'd like to hear your comment on that.
I just want to say
Mary, go ahead.
I am in favor of it. I did not know enough about it, but I believe it's an important tool to have. And some good points have been raised, but we definitely want to have every tool in the toolbox when we're dealing with this situation of homelessness.
Finally, Susan?
So I think the issue with Laura's Law is that it's often perceived as being something that might provide emergency intervention for someone who is seriously mentally ill and a threat either to themselves or to somebody else. Well, I understand that there's a 5150 and that there are a number of kinds of tools that are already available to mental health workers and the importance of the intensive case management, that this ends up being much more, instead of a law the way we can understand laws, if you go through a red light, you're subject to get a ticket, that this is a set of procedural issues that are very time consuming and that ultimately, like that, the idea of the black robe effect, that it depends on persuading somebody that they ought to do something, but there is not the law that's underneath it. It's a persuasive tool, not a real law.
All right. Thank you all very much.
It is a real law.
Ma'am? Thank you. We're going to move on to another question, and the person who submitted this specified that this is not about glyphosate. How would you propose to provide open space staff with the resources necessary to manage the 3,400 acres infested with invasive plants, especially in light of increased fire danger from climate change? And who wants to go first? I'll let you pick. Frank, you go ahead. We'll start with you.
The Fairfax, back in the late 80s, we initiated a program with the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. The cities of the county here put together a crew of inmates. We didn't actually put the crew together. The California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation put the crew together. The town bought a van. We bought a trailer with a toilet on it, and we paid for the correctional officer to lead the crew. And we had crews working, clearing our open space and clearing brush, fire areas, and so it worked back then just well. Today, the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation and CAL FIRE run almost 40 fire camps. And they do use inmate labor, and the inmates, it reduces the recidivism rate. It helps the inmates so they can transition back into a job when they're released, when they finish a parole, et cetera. And we can do that. We can reestablish that crew right here in Marin and take care of the entire open space lands.
We'll go to Kevin and come around this way.
I am not in favor of pressing prison inmates to deal with our invasive species problem in Marin County. Is this working? I think it is. So let me say that again. I am not in favor of pressing prison inmates into dealing with our invasive species problem in Marin. And I'm glad you qualified our opportunity to respond by not talking about glyphosate, so I will not talk about glyphosate. But I am in favor of a comprehensive integrated pest management program that uses all tools except for tools that have been demonstrated to cause cancer, like glyphosate. Sorry, I had to get that in controlling the rise of invasive species like Scotch broom within our community. That involves mechanical removal, that involves, if it's appropriate, the use of herbicides that have been demonstrated to be safe and effective before they are used, which is something that the county has not required so far, which is why glyphosate is still on the table as far as the county is concerned.
Time's
we
up.
have
Your
to take
roundup
care
is
of
over.
that problem in a comprehensive way. Sorry.
Yeah, I've cleared up Scotch broom off my property for the last 40 years, and it's actually pretty rewarding work.
Come on over to my house.
Yeah. My neighbors have indicated that. I think we should hire people and put them to work doing that. It's honorable work, and it needs to be done. And it's amazing how much you can achieve.
Dominic Grossi.
You know, it's interesting. You talked at the beginning this evening about tying all the dots together when it comes to sustainability, and I actually agree with what was just mentioned about putting some people to work as a way to deal with this. We look at some of our homeless and people that do want to work. Well, this would be an opportunity. Maybe the county could step up, look at how much money we have in funding to create some jobs, to do some of this work. That being said, I don't think we should eliminate spray. There's been a lot of conversation about that over the last few months. I think you need to leave all of your tools in there just as a possibility. It should be hand spraying. We shouldn't be going out doing massive aerial spraying, small amounts in the right places. The other thing I'll say, as a rancher that's going organic right now, we're no longer allowed to spray. So in my research over the past few months, as I go through this process, believe it or not, there are actually some organic sprays that don't cause cancer, that Kevin mentioned. So there are other options out there. We need to start looking at them, and we need to work with the people here to find jobs that might be able to clear some of this for us when those opportunities arise.
Wendi Kallins.
Yeah, there are not a lot of options when it comes to dealing with invasive species, and so the mechanical technique really is the best one. A lot of people say, well, why don't we get goats in there? And the thing about goats is, if you haven't noticed about goats, they eat everything, including endangered species. So I think we need to get away from thinking this is a budgetary issue and really hire people. And I'm really going to be agreeing with most people here, except I don't know if I want to use prison inmates, but I think we should hire people to regularly go out and pull invasive species from our open space. And the county has been reducing its use to almost nothing as far as the pesticide is concerned, and that really is the direction we need to continue to go, to the point where we no longer use cancer-causing chemicals in our open space.
Thank you. We'll go to Tomas, and just to advise the candidates and the audience, this is our last round of questioning.
I'm all for marathons, but wow. As a former fire official on the Nevada Fire Board of Directors, and then just having deployed for 2.5 months to Lake and Calaveras counties, you might be surprised that Lake County fire was actually the second largest in California history. And the fire fuel index currently for Marin County is nothing like they've ever seen in the last 20 years. So you have a TAM hand crew that needs to get funded. You need more hand crews that need to be funded by the county. They are doing an effective and efficient job, but they have way more work than they ever could possibly handle. And I believe the impetus for that question is, how are you doing prevention? And we have a very large wildland interface, so people need to be prepared. They need to have kits. They need to know their exit routes. We need to be able to energize, and I would like to energize the Disaster Council as well as the Office of Emergency Management to be able to empower both the citizens as well as our professional fire crews to be able to go and clear areas that impact our home and wildland interface in a sustainable way, but in a way that people are reinvesting back into that urban wildland interface so they actually understand those factors.
Dennis Rodoni.
I want to stand up because I'm looking for my clap crew, but I don't see him back there. No. Thank you. Our goal should be zero pesticide use at the county, but we're not quite there yet. We'll get there eventually. But more importantly, the public, the residents use way too much pesticides and toxics, and we need to concentrate on getting those removed from our households, getting those removed from our hardware stores, and concentrate on reducing that use. But I'm the only candidate, prior to Tomas just a minute ago, talking about fire in this campaign. And if you would look at the back of the room, there's my brochure, came out a week and a half ago, talking about fire risk in Marin County. You want to pay attention to it, pick one up. Sign up for alertmarin.org. It's an early warning system to get you safe if there's a fire in your neighborhood. Thank you.
Brian Staley.
One of the reasons that we're seeing such aggressive, invasive and non-native species really taking over, along with the fact that we also have sudden oak death in a lot of our trees, is the fact that there used to be enormous firestorms that would sweep through Marin on a regular basis. It would burn all the underbrush, and all of our trees and all of our larger species are all fire adapted. They actually, it assists them to procreate. So the issue that really is raised is the fact that we need to really look at all the tools including goats, controlled burns, and anything else we can use. One of the things that our local community has done through, I'm the chair of the San Geronimo Valley Planning Group, is we acquired a series of what are called weed wrenches of any imaginable size, and we provide them for free to the local community. And it's been an absolutely popular thing for folks to contact us and come get the weed wrench and clear their properties. So more communities really need to do this type of thing.
Mary Tamburo.
I like that idea of the tool shed. That's one of the things that maker movement is really big on, and I'm a big proponent of the maker movement. But yes, Scotch broom, I'm sure most of you know, was a government top-down mandated program. Let's fix erosion. We've got this great little plant that prevents soil erosion. So now we have all the Scotch broom. Plus, believe it or not, in nurseries they're still selling it. So what I'd like us to do is not sell any more Scotch broom or any invasive species like that are fire dangers. And also, we do have volunteer people, nonprofits working. We've got the local school that's working with our Homestead Valley Land Trust to remove broom. It's a really great collaborative effort. We just need to look at those programs that are working and replicate that. And we could also maybe adopt a broom puller type app so people can pay and then we can hire more people.
Thank you. Kate Sears.
So our county open space currently does apply a whole suite of different methods to dealing with our open space and our fire danger. And I think, as some folks have said, one of the particular challenges is our wildlands urban interface and the number of houses we have that back up against our open space. And that requires a real collaboration between our county efforts and the resident to make sure that those homes are safe. Our Conservation Corps North Bay does a lot of work for the county in broom and dealing with our fire safety issues. I think it's very important that we do emphasize finding non-toxic alternatives, and we are, and Supervisor Rice may talk about this as well, because we are collaborating on launching a campaign to get our public residents, our private residents, all of us as individuals, to stop using toxic herbicides. And that's crucially important because we do use so little. But the fire danger piece, I think, is incredibly significant. We were worried about it with the Lake County fires. With the intense fires in Canada, we're even that much more worried about it. And so the collaboration and paying attention to emergency response is crucial.
Susan Kirsch.
So, well, there's been so many good ideas from my colleague sitting up here, and so I want to just underscore many of those good ideas. And to add to that, to say that one of the things that we see in the county is that the streets team has been a really successful team for the homeless people and being able to do some street cleaning. So I think there's an option that we could also build on that, and that we could have more people who are hired and do end up getting some job skills and fresh air and exercise and the camaraderie and the self-respect of being able to be a part of what gets added to the mechanical and the goats and all of the other options that other people mentioned. So I fully support that.
Thank you. And Katie Rice.
Marin County Parks is actually the model, Marin County Open Space District, looked at as the model throughout the Bay Area for one of the most progressive IPM programs anywhere. We are, as others have noted, we've reduced chemical use out in the open space, in the parks. We're now pesticide-free in our regional parks, in our public buildings, in our medians. We're getting close to zero. The problem really is out in the public. That said, around the whole fire danger issue and all the homes that are along our open space, we have kept pesticides or herbicides in the toolkit, but they're not used for all fuel modification projects, and they're not used necessarily around homes. They're used judiciously and only as part of an integrated pest management project, and that's towards not encouraging more invasives into open space lands when you do a fuel modification project.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you very much. And now, there's just one more. First, I want to thank our timekeepers tonight, Alex Stadner and Linda Jackson. Thank you. Appreciate your help. And I'd like you to time just one more round as each candidate gets up to a minute for a closing statement. And I am going to start with Dennis Rodoni.
Thank you. You caught me off guard. I thought we were through.
I like to randomize it.
There you go. So I'm running for this job as supervisor because I believe I'm the best qualified. I've been on the North Marin Water Board for 21 years. I served 14 years on LAFCO, Local Agency Formation Commission. The last 10 years I've worked with the Sonoma County Water Agency in a leadership role, deciding water policy for 600,000 people, including 4 years of the drought. I was pleased to serve as chairman of that Water Advisory Committee, the first Marin person ever to serve, because as you know, it's mostly Sonoma County contractors, but I was selected because of the trust I had built in that organization. I've worked with the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors. I've been back to Washington looking for funds for the Dry Creek restoration, which is going to serve us well when those fisheries are survive up there and flourish. And I'm used to dealing with that. I've also worked on the private side where I helped raise $6.5 million for the Jackamini wetland restoration. So I'm very familiar with the government process, both private and public, and want to be your supervisor. Thank you.
Tomas, let's go to you next.
So this job, as two people up here know, is running a $500 million industry, if you will, or business. And I've spent a lot of that in my early life when I managed, and if I would encourage you to go and grab a business card with my personal cell phone number and my web address on there so you can look at my background. But I'm running for this position because I do believe that we need a new brand of leadership. And there are people up here that have been doing it in Marin County for some time, but they're talking small numbers. I just came off a response that was a $60 million response for us to help the 3,000 victims that lost their homes during the Lake and Calaveras counties. It's a very complex environment. I've been doing that for the last 8 years, and I've deployed all over the country. So my experience isn't just in Marin. I've seen other examples where communities have come together for a variety of different things, not just as a disaster responder, but economic viability, temporary and long-term housing, and so many more subjects that I didn't get a chance to get into tonight, but hopefully you'll look at my website and decide for yourself. Thank you. And thank you, Peter, for hosting and keeping us online.
Wendi, Kallins, your final comments?
So what I bring is 30 years of community service, being involved both in my local community, countywide, and on a state and national level. I'm only candidate in this particular race that actually has experience in every part of the district, both east and west. Hold it up. Got it. I've worked with all of the supervisors and the elected officials throughout the county and all of the many different police departments and public works departments. I know how government works, and I know how government doesn't work. And I know how to make it work better, how government can work in partnership with the citizens, how we can empower people to really be engaged and involved in the problem solving. We're living in very challenging times, as demonstrated by the many issues that we've talked about. And it takes someone with vision, someone who will take us into the 21st century with 21st century solutions. I believe I am that candidate. Thank you.
Dominic, Grossi.
I'm running for a number of reasons. For me, it's about bringing leadership to this position. And over my last 20 years, I've worked very hard, specifically in the agricultural community, taking on leadership responsibilities in every organization I've been a part of. And that leadership has been recognized by many other people. You know, the governor of California has appointed me to the Sonoma Marin Fair Board. The Secretary of Agriculture here in California has appointed me to the California Beef Council, as well as a dairy task force where we worked on dairy pricing. So they see that leadership, and they've seen that I've been able to work with people and get the job done. And that's what I'm most proud of, is that ability to collaborate and work with people. As president of Farm Bureau, I worked extensively with members of the environmental community and the ag community to try to come to a resolve on the many, many issues that we faced during the countywide plan update and now the local coastal plan update. And so finding those types of compromise is something that's very important in a supervisor who knows how to work with everybody to try to get things done. And I would really appreciate your vote come June 7th. Thank you.
Alex Easton-Brown.
You know, looking at us up here, it's probably hard to differentiate between us. One point is that development brings traffic, and three people up here tonight have been taking money from developers, Mr. Rodoni, Mr. Grossi, and Ms. Kallins. I don't know who else, but builders, developers? Anyway, okay, I'm going to move to something else. Yeah. In the 70s, before we had so many people, Beryl Buck left a bequest now totaling nearly $500 million to the ordinary people of Marin. On behalf of the people of Marin, it is imperative that we look at the funds and ask if they are being used as intended on the ordinary needs of Marin residents, helping with tuition, catching up on a mortgage payment, getting the kids' teeth fixed? Are the administrative salaries and expenses too high? And is Mrs. Buck's will truly being followed?
Thank you. Kevin Haroff.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you again for doing your job tonight. It was terrific. I thought we ought to actually give him a big round of applause right now. I'd appreciate it. I also want to thank all the candidates for appearing here. I thought everybody did a terrific job, but most of all, I want to thank all of you for coming and sitting with us this evening until 10 minutes after, no, almost 15 minutes after 9 o'clock. It's been a marathon, and I didn't swim here tonight. I just want to take an opportunity here at the end to make sure that folks understand there's a distinction between me and the other two candidates that are running for the District 2 Supervisor position. Unlike my opponents, I have not spent my entire adult life being part of Marin's political establishment. I have worked for 30 years as a lawyer, focusing on environmental and land use issues. I'm very proud of the accomplishments that I've achieved during the course of that professional life. I'm very proud of the fact that the Sierra Club has endorsed me. I'm very proud of the fact that the Citizens for Sustainable Pension Plans have endorsed me. They understand my commitment to the environment. They understand my commitment to transparency in government. They understand my commitment towards fiscal responsibility. I think all of you ought to take those into account, support me in my campaign, and vote this coming June. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank Egger.
There are real differences here this evening. As a 7-time mayor of Fairfax, as California's first coastal commissioner, I bring a certain ethic with this position. The second district will change from a bottom-up operation. I'm sorry, the second district will change from a top-down operation. And when I say top-down, one that's directed by management and consultants to a bottom-up operation directed by the constituents, those residents of the second district. I won't need a high-priced consultant to tell me which way to vote on issues here. I'll be representing you, and you'll have a direct line to the Civic Center to the second district, and you'll have a direct line to me in my home. My home phone number is everywhere. I'm old school. The phone rings, I answer it, I pick it up, I say hello. You got an issue with me, you call me. I spent a number of years, actually 8 years, as the Bay Area coordinator to stop aerial pesticide spraying from light brown apple moth. And this year we were successful in the 3rd District Appellate Court decision. So we will not be sprayed in Marin County to eradicate the light brown apple moth.
Thank you. A.D. Rice.
So it's really been an honor to serve as supervisor these last 4 years and to work for Hal Brown 8 years before that, and then it's been a privilege actually to have been a resident of Marin my entire life. I really know this county, I know this community, I care deeply about it. I think probably the most important thing anyone brings to this job is that actually you look, there are many complex issues. And as we sit in that seat and deliberate the complex issues, that we remember to look through those issues through the lens of climate change, through the lens of equity and education, and through the lens of future generations. I bring to this job the ability to wear those lenses. I keep them in the forefront of my consciousness as I'm doing this job, and I bring a track record of success getting things done. Thanks.
Susan Kirsch.
So the evening started with looking at that question of sustainability and how important sustainability is. So a part of what I bring, and the reason I'm running for this position, is I do think it's time for a change for the representation from the 3rd District. And I have a whole theme going here around the seas. So it's time for a change. I will be a person who represents the constituency and listens to and makes decisions based on the wishes of the constituency. I bring communication skills as a part of my background to do that. I bring competence from the work that I've done as an executive director in a nonprofit organization, as well as all of the community leadership kind of things that I've done. And maybe at the core of why I want to come and fill this role is a deep caring about what happens to our community. And that caring is about the people and the places and the projects and the policy. And so as a supervisor, I'm prepared to set policy that provides the greatest amount of caring for the greatest number of people.
Thank you. Kate Sears.
So I'm really a child of this community. I was raised by strong environmentalists, and my parents were very committed to public service. And in this job of supervisor, you need to have skills at a couple of levels. One, you really need to be able to look very broadly at what are we thinking about in terms of sustainability, equity, education, environment, the economy. You need to be able to integrate all of those issues and think forward into the future. You also need to be able to think very carefully about the specific decisions that you are called upon to make, and make sure you know the facts, make sure you've really talked to everyone, make sure that you have an open mind and you're working collaboratively with everyone and planning towards the future. It's easy to talk about that, but one of the specific ways that we do plan for the future, frankly, is something like Measure AA. That's an investment in our future generations. We need to be able to have the courage to step forward and take a risk and do what's right for both those of us who are here today and those of us who are coming after.
Thank you. Mary Tamburo.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for being so kind. I'm really sorry that I was late. I lost some opportunity to share how I feel about sustainability and my thoughts around traffic because I was stuck in it. But I don't have a lot of experience in the public realm as far as government goes, but I do know what doesn't work. And what didn't work for me was how a construction project was forced upon my neighborhood, and we had to sue to try to save our semi-rural environment and prevent almost 1 million gallons of stormwater runoff going into a creek that contains federally endangered species. I was very, very disappointed in how close-minded people pushing the project were, and I do respect a lot of the work that Safe Routes to Schools has done. I agree with their mission. Everyone wants kids to be safe, but I have a background in the community-built planning process, and my time is up. So please just go to my website, maritamburo.com, that's MARITAMBURO, and look up some of my work. Thanks.
Not least but last, Brian Staley.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your work. I'm a third-generation Californian who's been incredibly blessed to grow up here in Marin County. As a designer and planner, I have 3 decades in working to protect the character of our communities, and it's been an amazing experience. I've had an opportunity to essentially work with the county for all that time, and I've learned a very close understanding of the codes and the regulations that are governing our communities. My primary concern in this campaign is that the state is in the process of implementing a number of rather radical and major changes to the regulatory regimes that cover our community in terms of the way we deal with our effluent, and as Dominic had mentioned, the local coastal program, which I believe will allow for an absolutely massive amount of development in the coastal areas of Marin County. And I'm planning to continue to fight for protecting our community character.
I'd like to thank all the candidates. I'd like to thank Sustainable Marin, and I would like to suggest if anybody's got a Red Bull, Dennis has been getting pretty sleepy here, and he's got a long drive home. Thank you for enduring this. Go forth and vote.